gift to be simple. It's a gift to be free. It's a gift to be where we want to be.
All right, welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of February 7th, 2022. In accordance with LB 898, please be advised that a copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted at the back of the chamber by the northwest door. Let us all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The order of business of the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda. Under public hearing, anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The council shall require any member of the public desiring to address the council to identify themselves, the name of an organization or group, including an address, that you may be representing by such person or group, unless the address requirement is waived to protect the security of the individual. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, organization, or group, and whether you are speaking in favor of or in opposition to the item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolutions and items listed under third reading. On the second and last Mondays of the month, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on any issue not on the agenda for that date, nor plan for a future agenda. Will the clerk please call the first item of business?
Our first item of business for today's council meeting for Monday, February 7, 2021. Just a reminder that we will not have a city council meeting on Monday, February 21st of 2022. Our next item on the agenda is our Mayor's Award of Excellence.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bowers and members of the City Council. It's great to be back down here, and I'm so pleased to stand before you today to present the Mayor's Award of Excellence for August 2021 to a team you know well. This is a team from the City Communications Division of the Mayor's Office, and these are Public Information Specialists Jamie Wentz and Bo Wolf from our LNK TV team. They were nominated this time because, you know, they've won this award before, but they were nominated this time by former County Deputy Chief Administrator Ann Ames in the categories of customer relations and productivity for their work to facilitate the county board meetings during the pandemic. And as many of you know, Jamie Wentz is now employed by UNL, and so we actually awarded him his plaque last month before he left. But we're pleased that Bo is here today and able to take some time from producing this actual meeting to come forward and join us for this presentation. And a shout out to Melissa Fuller for keeping the meeting going behind the scenes and keeping us on air while we do that. So Ann Ames wrote that when the pandemic began, Jamie and Bo were critical to the continued successful functioning of the county board by pivoting to a virtual meeting format. Ann said that the team's hard work and commitment enabled the county board to continue business operations with no delays. They worked tirelessly to make sure that the Zoom meetings functioned correctly and that the public viewing portions of the meetings worked seamlessly. The team even worked with staff to make sure that all of the county board budget hearings were smooth during the pandemic. Both Jamie and Bo went above and beyond their regular duties to be available, to adapt quickly to changes, to send and resend invitations, to deal with technical questions, and to respond to all requests from the county board. I think you all know and have experienced firsthand the kind of heavy lifting that they have been doing throughout the pandemic. Ann wrote, their additional work and service prioritized the health of the county board, county staff, and the public, and for that we are eternally grateful. I join Ann in praising our LNK TV team as a great asset to both the county and our city. And we are so accustomed to their high quality programming, their professional video productions, and their teams and the team's assistance during this long pandemic. We all know how invaluable they have been and continue to be. We have been able to safely conduct public meetings like this city council meeting, thanks to, and to be able to take the public comment that is so important for you to do your role and to help lead this city. Their effort has been instrumental in supporting that leadership. I hope you will please join me in congratulating Bo for his hard work and commitment to the city and county. Let's bring him down and present the award. Why don't you stand here?
Bo knows public access.
Diane Gonzalez from City Communications is here to say a few words, and then we'll ask Bo if he'd like to say a few words as well.
Thank you, Mayor. As the Mayor mentioned, this is not the first time that this pair has been awarded the Mayor's Award of Excellence. In fact, way back in 2012, Bo won the annual award for a project that he did on bullying. I may be biased, but I think that we are fortunate to have probably the best public government access channel in the nation with LNK TV. And that's, thank you, Betty. That's due to Bo and Melissa and Jamie and all the people who have worked there before. I think that over the last 2 years, as we've all seen, that LNK TV has been really crucial in not just helping us get out important health information, but also in keeping local government accountable and accessible and transparent for the public. So really proud of all they do. And congratulations, Bo.
Would you like to come forward and introduce any special guests
Sure.
you may have and say a few words?
I'd like to thank my wife and my son who are here today
Yay.
for the award. I also want to thank just the mentorship that I had from Jamie and also from the communication staff. You know, it's a team effort to make everything work. And I also appreciate Ann with the county board recognizing some of the stuff we do. But it's, you know, it's very rewarding, very humble to receive this. Thank you.
Thank you. Give me one more round of applause. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Okay. Next up, on our agenda is our consent agenda, sections 1 and 2.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on items 1 or 2?
Hi, Brian Willard, 3801 Rokeby Road, former business administrator at Salvation Army. I want to speak against Megan Leisveld being on the Keno board for several different reasons. First off, Monday, March 2nd, 2020, I met with the United Way of Lincoln, Nebraska's executive director, Megan Leisveld, and her director of community impact, Rachel Shermick, at the Starbucks off of 33rd and O Street. Part of our conversation can be found on my website, task67.com. I could give you guys the entire file. It's like 40 minutes. You can't hear all of it because we're in Starbucks, but you know, it concerns me, and I'll get to that. Later that same day, I was called into Major Mark Anderson, which would be my boss at the Salvation Army at the time, into his office, and I was given my first written warning for violating company policy. He never liked it when I talked to anyone writing us grants or giving us money, even though the grants required that in the contracts. I'm not 100% sure if it was Megan Leisveld of the United Way or Sarah Hoyle of Lincoln Lancaster County Human Services that told my boss that I informed them that I was concerned that he was not using their grants appropriately. So it was one or the other. Because I met with Sarah Hoyle here in this building with some other Lincoln Lancaster County employee February 29th, 2020, just the Friday before that Monday. So could have been her or who she was with, could have been Megan or Rachel Shermick, I don't know. But regardless, I was written up right away after that. What I do know is that going all the way back to Wednesday, June 19th, 2019, my third day on the job there at the Salvation Army, Major Mark Anderson of the Salvation Army Lincoln Corps had me and Community Center Matthew Drummond into his office for a telephone conference with Ashley Hollins, administrative assistant at the United Way, Lincoln, Nebraska. Major had a pre-filled out C-Impact, which is the United Way's report for me to discuss with Ashley and to verify for him. I could not do this, as it was my third day on the job. The person I replaced hadn't been there for several months, and she replaced a business administrator that was fired, because half the price, plus she didn't have a business administrator degree to hold him accountable, in my opinion. So anyway, like one of the things I thought was odd was that on that C-Impact report, the Salvation Army helped 235 people with fires the previous year here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I didn't know we had that big of a fire epidemic. I didn't know there was that many houses burning down. So, I wasn't willing to just go ahead and verify that, especially since you wanted me to up those numbers for the following year so we'd get even more money for disaster services and all that other kind of stuff. So anyway, I have included some of that in the packets I gave you guys. I gave the Chairman Shob packets with various information. So anyway, considering Megan Leisfeld's response to my concerns at Starbucks March 2nd, 2020, which I do have the audio, task67.com, it's on there. If you want to see it, she didn't seem concerned at all what the Salvation Army did with her money. So I do not think she's a good candidate to be on Nebraska's Keno board because, she's going to be giving money to people like the Salvation Army. What I hate about the United Way is they'll take a cut before they even give it to the Salvation Army. So of course she wants the Salvation Army to get money because then she gets some of that money, I'm assuming. So I don't think that that's a good choice for the Keno board. And I've laid out what I gave you guys in packets for anybody who wants to go on task67.com. There's a huge report with all the different emails I had with Ashley Hollins when she was concerned with me saying, hey, none of this stuff makes sense. And I'm saying, I don't know what you want me to tell you. My boss is telling me I have to put something, even though I know we didn't keep track of any of that stuff. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on items 1 or 2? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
We can now vote on these items. Item 1A, approving subscription services agreement between the city and with Recollect Systems, Inc. for a digital communications tool for recycling for a 3-year term from April 6, 2022 to April 5, 2025. Introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Ward.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 1B is appointing Megan Leisfeld to the Keno Human Services Advisory Board for a term expiring December 31st, 2023, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Councilwoman Washington?
Well, this is unusual because we rarely have anyone speak against an appointment to a commission, and I guess I didn't quite understand all the dates, sir, that you threw out.
I've got all the dates on my website. When I first started working at the Salvation Army, the internal auditor in Omaha warned me to keep track of everything because he said the Lincoln Corps majors were corrupt. This was
Okay.
what he said.
All right,
So I
thank
keep
you.
track of all of it.
All right, but I'm not sure that I followed all those dates. I do know that Megan Leisfeld has been an advisor who attends the Joint Budget Committee, Juvenile Services, and has provided excellent consultations and advice on different matters of human services in Lincoln, and so I've come to respect her opinion. And so I wanted to at least acknowledge that we had someone speak against, and to say that I have worked closely with Megan Leisfeld for about 3 years now on the JBC, and have found her to be quite professional in her dealings, and I will be able to support this one.
Well said. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Ward.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 1C is approving the renewal grant from the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of the Tobacco Free Nebraska Program to the Lincoln Lancaster County Health Department in the amount of $481,309.45 for program goals of reducing secondhand smoke, e-cigarette exposure, preventing youth tobacco e-cigarette initiation, reducing tobacco e-cigarette disparities, and promoting local cessation resources for the period of January 1st, 2022 through June 30th of 2023, introduced by Ward.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion?
No.
Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Ward,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. We'll move on to our section 4 of our public hearing liquor resolutions. I'll be calling items 4A and 4B together. Manager application of Tyler N. Hendricks for Mochara LLC, doing business as Cliff's Martini Lounge, located at 5310 South 56th Street, number 1, as well as Mochara LLC, doing business as Watering Hole, located at 1319 and 1323 O Street.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
I'll be calling item 4C, manager application of Jason R. Johnson for Olderbeck Enterprises North LLC, doing business as Annabelle Gardens, located at 200 South 68th Street Place.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Come on up.
Hello, I'm Jason. So, yeah, we're just trying to get the liquor license reinstated as the previous owners did let it lapse. So we don't know exactly what our service is going to look like, but we want to make sure that we have it in place. So when that's determined, we can roll with it.
Any questions from the council? Okay, seeing
Nope.
none,
All right.
thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on item 4C? Okay, seeing none, let's go ahead and move on.
Mr. Chair, seeing no one coming up to talk about items 4A, B, or C, I'd like to move approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilwoman Washington. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. We'll be moving on to our section 5, public hearing ordinances, second reading and related resolutions. Item 5A is amending the employee group whose classifications are assigned to pay range which is prefixed by the letter W to change the titles of Equity and Diversity Officer to Human Rights Manager.
Good afternoon, Council. Doug McDaniel, Human Resources. As the resolution states, this is a title change from the current Equity Diversity Officer to Human Rights Manager for clarification with the new emerging position of Diversity and Equity Inclusion Manager in Human Resources to distinguish the duties of the two positions.
Thanks so much. Are there any questions from the council? Thank you so much. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
Item 5B is approving amendment number 1 to agreement with PCS Tower and the appurtenances between the city and New Singular Wireless PCS LLC to renew the agreement for the 3 additional 5-year terms.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this item? Is there someone coming? Okay. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on.
I will be calling items 5C, 5D, and 5E together. Annexation 21012, application of Sundance LLC to annex approximately 5.45 acres, more or less, on property generally located at southeast of South 40th Street and Rokeby Road. And the related change of zone 20002A, application of Sundance LLC to change from AG Agriculture District to R5 Residential District PUD planned unit development to expand the existing Grandale South addition planned unit development by 5.45 acres for an additional 120 dwelling units, 120 hotel units, and a 9,000 square foot decrease in commercial floor area with requested waivers on the property generally located at South 40th Street and Rokeby Road, and the approval of amendment number 1 and restatement of the conditional annexation agreement for 40th and Rokeby Road between City Bryan Medical Center and Sundance LLC.
Good afternoon. My name's Kent Seacrest, representing Sundance LLC, whose principals are John Sampson and Corey Sampson Vokoon. In the audience today, also available to answer any questions you might have, is Aaron Bright, with a civil engineer with Olson. There are 3 agenda items in front of you tonight: an annexation of 5.45 acres, a change of zone for a little bit more, 5.9 acres, because we'd already previously zoned 5/10 of an acre, and then a redevelopment, kind of a First Amendment and restatement of the conditional zoning and annexation agreement we did back in 2020. This project, if you recall, 2020 was a joint effort by Sundance and Bryan Memorial Medical Center. Sundance had this parcel 1, Bryan had parcel 2, and from that, we are in the midst of working on collectively the construction of the April Sampson Cancer Center, which we're really proud about. So what we're doing today is taking what we did in 2020 and adding this blue area. This area and this area were already approved, so we're just adding this blue area to allow the same type of proposed land uses to go forward. We have asked for waivers last time. They're the same waivers that would be expanded to the blue area. We have basically added more residential dwelling units, so we can go up to 300 dwelling units plus a 120 unit hotel, which we think could be advantageous across from the cancer center. So we're excited about that. We reduced some of our commercial from 15,000 down to 6,000 to make way for these changes along to go forward. This amendment does not affect the Bryan parcel at all. It's just the North Sampson parcel, parcel 1, and expanding it to include parcel 3 as we go forward. The planning, we had a neighborhood Zoom meeting. I think it went well. There was no opposition at Planning Commission. The Planning Commission approved this 7-0, the various land use. I would ask, though, something unusual. Could you continue this public hearing for 1 week? I discovered this morning that the engineers and Tim Zott, who is Transportation Utilities Watershed Division Manager, are still talking about how the wording of one of our conditions on side slopes for a detention facility. So it's a very technical thing that we're not ready to say that we've reached agreement with. The 2 sides have agreed through emails I saw this afternoon to meet tomorrow. So I'm hoping by next Monday we would be able to hand something real simple out to you. If not, I'd like to be able to then to discuss this technical matter that's come up regarding our detention facility. And with that, again, I want to thank the Planning Department and Law for all their assistance on this. And with that, we'd be glad to answer any of your questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Seacrest?
No. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Okay, is there anyone else here that would like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, I would ask for a motion to continue public hearing for 1 week on these items.
So moved.
Yeah. Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Washington, seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Councilman Shope?
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we're having a public hearing today. It would be up for a vote next week anyway, so we'll just have an additional public hearing to go with next week's vote.
Correct.
Thank
you. Perfect. Any further discussion or comments? Okay, seeing none, may you please call the roll?
Shope,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which I'm sure we have a lot of folks here to testify on. Just as a reminder, we have sign-up sheets. If you have not signed in, please do so at the front door. We're having folks that are in support testify first, then we'll move on to folks that are in opposition testify after that group is done. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. When you've hit the 1 minute mark, Madam Clerk will let you know. And once you've testified, if you'd please exit outside the council chambers, so that way we can open up the council chambers for other folks to come in and have a seat. It would be much appreciated. Okay, that being said, Madam Clerk, will you please call the item?
Item 5F, amending various provisions of Title 11 of the Lincoln Municipal Code, Equal Opportunity.
Councilwoman Washington, would you like to open?
I would thank you very much, Chairman Bowers. Today, I am pleased to bring an ordinance before council and the community for public hearing. The ordinance would update that portion of the Lincoln Municipal Code pertaining to equal opportunity. We live in a community that proudly proclaims that every person should have the same right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Every person should be judged by their character and the content of their hearts. And I trust I also live in a community that believes that no one should be denied employment, housing, or service because of who they are or who they love. We live in a city that purports to welcome and respect every individual, and these updates to Title 11 will put our values of respect into practice. Here is our chance to make the American dream of equal opportunity a step closer to reality. This afternoon, many residents will come forward to speak in support and in opposition of the proposed changes. I ask that each speaker be given the respect each of us are due and be treated with civility. Thank you, Mr. Bowers, for allowing me to speak, and I will yield for staff presentation.
Okay.
Yancey Christie, City Attorney, 555 South 10th. What I'm going to do is just give a brief history and then kind of a brief summary. The Lincoln Commission on Human Rights started in 1963 when I believe it was Mayor Dean Peterson called on Gerald Henderson to lead the Mayor's Council on Human Relations in response to the President's request that cities throughout the country form human rights councils to deal with tensions across the country. Shortly thereafter, in 1964, the Federal Civil Rights Act was passed. In 1966, the Lincoln voters passed Article 10, an anti-discrimination human rights amendment to the city charter, and the Mayor's Council on Human Rights officially became the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights. In 1973, Lincoln implemented its Fair Housing, Fair Employment, and Equal Accommodations Ordinances, which make up Title 11 of the Lincoln Municipal Code. Title 11 is completely outward-facing and addresses discrimination matters within the community of Lincoln, not within the city's workforce. So again, it's outward-facing. Except for the passage of the Youth Mental Health and Protection Act, which was passed last year in 2021, Title 11 has not been revised in, I believe, more than 25 years. The last revision was in 1996. However, since 1996, as I think we're all aware, there have been significant developments within civil rights law. Brief summary, the Title 11 revisions that are before you are necessary to modernize and bring Title 11 into substantial equivalency with federal civil rights laws, as well as to harmonize some of the procedures of the Commission related to housing, employment, and public accommodation discrimination complaints. As an example, the revisions remove some outdated terms, repetitive and redundant sections, and align some of the procedures surrounding the public hearings that take place through the Commission. The scale of the amendments, respectfully, I would submit, make it seem more dramatic than the actual effect. The draft contains additional and clarified definitions, but otherwise, the revisions before you clean up a lot of the organizational structure and incorporates, again, up-to-date and more appropriate terms to, again, harmonize with federal language. So that is the bulk of it. I think it's important to understand that in order to continue to receive funding through cooperative agreements with the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Title 11 must be in substantial conformance with the civil rights of 1964. Because it's imperative that the Commission on Human Rights retain these cooperative work-share agreements These efforts are made to apply uniform procedures to all complaints received by the commission and charged to public hearing. I think it's important to understand that. Happy to talk more about that if there's additional questions. The revisions also attempt to more fully describe the rights and duties of the commission. Some of the proposed amendments provide a much more exhaustive list of the remedies that are available to the commission once there's a finding of discrimination after a public hearing. Availability of certain legal and equitable remedies under the current vision of Title 11 have been somewhat problematic in the past. So again, clarifies that. The most significant substantive proposed change is the addition of 3 protected classes: sexual orientation, gender identity, and military status. It's important, I think, to understand that many states and municipalities have already incorporated these protections into their local laws. When we most recently looked at this, I think 12 out of 14 of the Big Ten communities have enacted specific protections locally for sexual orientation and gender identity protected classes. The 13th community doesn't have it locally, but it is in the state statute. So the state affords protection for sexual orientation and gender identity. So that would mean that we were the only Big Ten school without this protection. Lastly, I think we've talked about Bostock, which is just the 2020 decision from the U.S. Supreme Court, Bostock v. Clayton County, Georgia, which confirmed that sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination are prohibited under the sex-based employment protections of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. That was a decision related to employment. It's important to understand that even though the case was about employment discrimination, employment discrimination case law is often used in housing and public accommodation discrimination cases. So if you look through the case law, a lot of cases dealing with housing and public accommodation will refer to employment definitions in case law. This is primarily, I think, the result of the fact that there's a larger body of employment discrimination case law and a much more limited number of housing and public accommodation cases. The federal administration and HUD have confirmed that sexual orientation and gender identity discrimination are prohibited sex-based discrimination in housing matters as well. And so with these decisions regarding federal law, it's important for us to make some changes to maintain our federal partnerships with these federal organizations and to make sure that they continue to provide a significant portion of the funding for the work of the Commission on Human Rights. Lastly, I think that the Title 11 definitions that apply in employment, housing, and public accommodation sections and the revisions the idea of this is, of course, to allow the Commission to keep working on its goal for the Lincoln community members, which really is to eliminate discrimination in all forms. So, thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Christie at this time? Okay, seeing none, thanks so much. Are there other staff that are presenting information at this time? No? Okay. Like I said, we'll call, Madam Clerk will call who's up next to testify. And once we get through the support list, then we'll move on to the second list of those that are in opposition. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Please state your name and your address. Once you've hit the 1 minute remaining, our Madam Clerk will give you a reminder. And once you've done providing information for your testimony, please exit to the left so that way other people can come into the council chambers. Before Madam Clerk calls the first person down, I'd like to invite Mayor Gaylor Baird up.
Good afternoon once again, Chairman Bowers, members of the City Council. Thank you so much for this opportunity to stand before you in support of these updated changes to Title 11 of our city code. As it has been stated, this section of our code hasn't been updated in more than 25 years. As a mayor and a mother raising 3 children in Lincoln, I support the proposed changes in the strongest terms. I want to be able to go home and tell my kids and kids all across our community that they can. I want to go home and promise them that they can grow up in this community feeling respected and safe and enjoy a true sense of belonging and can safely build their lives and livelihoods. This legislation helps us make and keep that promise to our children and our community. As Lincoln strives to compete for top talent in an increasingly competitive job market, this legislation is essential. More than 400 other cities have passed similar ordinances, including, as our city attorney mentioned, nearly every other community member of the Big Ten Conference. Today, you will hear from business leaders and our young professionals who will echo this message, that people and businesses want to locate in cities and states that are welcoming and that respect everyone, no matter who you are or whom you love. I support these changes to Title 11 and look forward to your vote on them next Monday, which happens to be February 14th. What a fitting day to vote and to send a Valentine message of love and belonging to all who call and who will one day call Lincoln home. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, we'll open up the public hearing. Again, 5 minutes per testimony. Once you've provided comment, please exit to the left. Council will break for a 10-minute recess at 5 o'clock and also again at 7 o'clock. Madam Clerk.
Okay. First up is Angela Garbax. Next would be Kendra King.
Madam Clerk, would you mind saying that a little bit? I can hear noise in the lobby, and I'm not sure that everyone outside can hear the monitor.
I'm calling testimony that is in favor for item 5F. First up is Angela Garbax. Angela Garbax.
She coming?
Someone is moving. I don't know. No.
We'll go on to the next one then.
Okay. Next would be Kendra King.
Hello, my name is Kendra King, 4619 Hillside Street. Thank you to the Lincoln City Council for bringing forth this much-needed update to the non-discrimination code. As a mother of our 13-year-old daughter who identifies as a lesbian, this update is the right action in order to create a city that acknowledges, celebrates, and supports the LGBTQ+ community. Our daughter told us her truth at the age of 8 that she plans to marry a woman. One of my first thoughts was, well, we'll probably need to move. That doesn't sound rational to some, but knowing that the current systems in our community of Lincoln do not support and in fact oftentimes discriminate people in the LGBTQ+ community, that is a consideration we continue to evaluate when raising a young person in these systems that are outdated, fundamentally and systemically oppressive. We want to live in Lincoln, be close to family and friends, and continue to thrive in this city, and yet we understand there is work to be done so that people in marginalized communities are safe and supported as they live their one precious life. The city of Lincoln prides itself on being nice, kind, respectful, and a safe place to raise your family. Respect is built by acknowledging the diversity in the community, promoting opportunities for community dialogue, and allowing the diversity of families to be visible within our schools and the systems where we work and live. The oppression of the LGBTQ+ community is happening in our city, in our schools, and woven within the systems we work in. All people in Lincoln want equitable access to opportunities for success. Updating systems, policies, standards, and laws will help keep families in Lincoln to contribute to the successes of this community. So I stand here today in full support of the hard work you all have done to understand the importance of this update and the positive effects it will have on the Lincoln community. Thank you.
Next up is Barbara DeBernard. Excuse me, DeBernard.
Yes, my name is Barbara DeBernard. I live at 1045 North 41st Street in Lincoln, 68503. I am testifying on my own behalf as well as that of Fairness Lincoln. First, I'd like to thank the council members for working so hard to make Lincoln a good place to live and work and recreate. You do a lot of work for us, and I appreciate it. But I'm here today to ask you to vote in favor of the proposed revisions to Title 11 of the Municipal Code, because it's the right thing to do. That's really the only reason. It's the right thing to do. Everyone deserves equal protection under the law. But other reasons to support the revisions are, one, that they broaden the groups of people who will receive protections against discrimination. And two, as our attorney said, they bring Lincoln's non-discrimination policies in line with federal policies. In addition, the proposed revisions will help Lincoln retain and attract a sufficient talented workforce. During my 33 years of teaching at UNL, I worked with a number of remarkable young people who were born in Nebraska, but did not stay after college because of the repressive atmosphere, evidenced by the lack of local and state protections for sexual orientation and gender identity. It's sad that these young people who had so much potential to contribute to Lincoln felt unwelcome here. If these revisions to Title 11 have been in effect, they might have stayed. Please vote for the revisions of Title 11. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next is Abby Swatsworth. On deck would be Sarah Rips.
Hello, my name is Abby Swatsworth, ABBI, S as in Sam, WATSWORTH. I'm representing Out Nebraska at 211 North 14th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska 68508. Thank you, Council, for the opportunity to provide testimony on this update to our city code. Out Nebraska is a statewide organization based in Lincoln, working to advocate, celebrate, and educate on LGBTQ+ issues in order to improve the quality of life for our communities. This update to city code will ensure that Lincoln is a modern, welcoming city. The Movement Advancement Project indicates that at least 330 municipalities, or maybe as many as 400, have already explicitly and fully prohibited discrimination against LGBTQ people in employment, housing, and public accommodations. This list of municipalities continues to grow as more city leaders agree that these protections are the right thing to do. Across our races, backgrounds, and genders, we all want to be treated with dignity and respect. By passing protections against discrimination, Lincoln can ensure that each of us has the freedom to be ourselves, pursue our dreams, and have a good life. Religious freedom is a value that we can all agree on. Nebraskans enjoy robust religious freedoms. We believe this update strikes the right balance in protecting religious freedoms. Despite what may be opposition from religious organizations, many people of faith believe that their faith calls them to welcome and protect everyone, black or white, rich or poor, transgender or not. With this update, we help to make sure that young people of all genders can thrive and share their talents with Lincoln rather than moving away from their families. It means that businesses will have a better chance to attract and retain talented workers to fill their many open positions. Nebraska competes A project of Out Nebraska is a nonpartisan coalition of businesses committed to achieving non-discrimination policies at the community and state levels in order to attract the best talent, to increase business-to-business and business-to-consumer relationships, and to grow Nebraska's economy. The coalition is currently 72 businesses strong. 37 of these organizations are located in Lincoln. Nebraska Competes believes that Lincoln can win investment, business, and talent by sending a clear and consistent signal that the LGBTQ community is fully welcome here. This message matters to large and small businesses, to tourism and travel bookers, and to talented workers. Treating LGBTQ plus people fairly and welcoming them warmly costs nothing and would improve our city's brand for the better while creating quantifiable long-term economic benefits. Out Nebraska and Nebraska Competes know that this is the right thing to do and the right time to do it. Thank you for your support, and I will answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
No.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you.
Next is Sarah Rips. On deck would be Reverend Oscar Sinclair.
Thank you, counselors. My name is Sarah Rips, S-A-R-A-R-I-P-S. I am the LGBTQIA+ Legal and Policy Counsel for the ACLU of Nebraska. Our address is 134 South 13th Street, Suite 1010. I want to first thank Counselor Washington for bringing these proposed changes and the council today for their time. I come before you today to speak in support of modernizing the language of Title 11. To all my fellow Nebraskans who are trans, gender nonconforming, and non-binary, I want to acknowledge you and reaffirm the ACLU's commitment to fighting with you and for you, because we mean it when we say Nebraska should be for everyone. LGBTQ Nebraskans are our friends and our neighbors. We work hard, pay taxes, raise families, serve in the military, and contribute to our communities. Our laws should ensure that we receive protection from those who wish to discriminate. Grounded in the American values of fairness, equality, and freedom, the updates to Title 11 ensure that people who work hard and play by the rules can move forward in our society. From a policy perspective, this is a common sense update and revision our already well-established strong civil rights laws. I know based on the legal intakes I receive and from self-reporting from the community that there are Lincolnites and Nebraskans at large who experience discrimination in the workplace based on their gender identity and their sexual orientation. In the summer of 2020, the Supreme Court affirmed in Bostock versus Clayton County that discrimination in the workplace based on gender identity and sexual orientation is a violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. After the Bostock ruling, the NEOC determined that they would apply Bostock to housing discrimination as well. By adopting these updates to Title 11, the council ensures that the municipal code aligns with federal and state law. Not only do updating our laws provide Lincolnites with greater clarity and a sense of belonging, but it helps provide clarity to all stakeholders. Approving these updates sends a strong message that Lincoln is a city that can attract new businesses, create jobs, address brain drain, and better compete in a global marketplace. Advancing the proposed updates to Title 11 is a good first step to extolling why there is no place like Nebraska. Thank you, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Are there any questions at this time? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you, counselors.
I think that we might, if I may, I think we might have a speaker who was called previously, who stepped into the room.
Angela Garbas.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I'm Angela Garbitz, and I'm the owner of Goldenrod Pastries. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to talk with you here today in favor of updating this ordinance. I'm not a person who prepares words very well, but this comes up at a very interesting time. Last week I was contacted by somebody seeking employment who is currently working at a place of business that the management is transphobic, and this person is transgender and also Latina and has been discriminated against for that as well. And this person came to me seeking a place of business where they would be accepted and where they felt safe. And while I will always make sure that Goldenrod Pastries is a safe place for people to work, it isn't the responsibility of a small business owner to make sure that people in our community feel safe. That's the responsibility of our city. That's the responsibility of our elected officials to help people feel safe. And I will always make sure that those people do feel safe, but it's hard to hear such a terrible story. And, you know, I love living in Lincoln. I looked for employment and thought that I wanted to live on a coast and work there and build a business there. But ultimately, I chose to be in Lincoln, Nebraska, because this is where I'm from and this is a place I believe in. And this is a place where I believe that people's dreams can come true, where mine has with Goldenrod Pastries. And I have worked with a lot of incredible people. I've worked with a lot of incredible organizations, and I feel like Lincoln is such a great place that we need this update. We need this so badly. And I think that it speaks volumes to the people who are here, the people who want to stay here, like I chose to stay here. And I want to keep these young people here who, you know, are transgender, are, you know, have a different gender or sexuality identity than is mainstream. And I just feel very strongly from my heart that this is the place that we can do that. And I'm so grateful that this is being talked about. I'm so grateful that so many people are showing up to talk about it. And as a small business owner in Lincoln, I have hope and faith in all of you that we can continue to make Lincoln a safe place. And I'll continue to do my part as a small business owner. And I hope that we can all together do our part to make this a safe and progressive place for people to live and feel safe. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
If you have any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none.
Thank you
so
all
much.
very much.
Next is Reverend Oscar Sinclair. On deck would be Colton Zarmsla.
Mm-hmm. Good afternoon, Chairman Bowers, members of the council. My name is the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. I serve the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. We're located at 6300 A Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68510. I am also a resident of Lincoln. I live just a couple blocks down the street at 702 Sumner. I'm speaking in favor of this proposed ordinance this afternoon for two related reasons. The first is that my wife and I are transplanted Lincolnites. We moved here half a decade ago, and we have fallen in love with this city. We regularly tell our friends and family across the country of the wonders of Lincoln, Nebraska, of the school system, of the local government, of the bike trails, about this place that we've landed in and love. And we encourage them to move here and be part of this community. And in many of those conversations, the first question that our friends and family ask us is, will we be safe there? Will I be protected legally from discrimination based on who I am or who I love? This ordinance goes a long way in letting us answer that question, yes. Because we should be clear right now. Right now, the answer is not always yes, particularly in public accommodation. I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had sitting in my office at 6300 A Street with folks from this city who have been profoundly hurt, professionally, personally, economically, by discrimination on the basis of their race, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And I mourn every time I have one of those meetings. And I am angry every time I have one of those meetings, because that is not the community that I fell in love with. faith that we preach at my church every Sunday says two big things: that every person, without exception, has inherent worth and dignity, and that we are all interconnected. In the language of the faith that I grew up in, we are all beloved children of God, and our calling is to love one another as ourselves. And it is because of that, not in spite of it, that I'm here speaking to you today. I am happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Next up is Colton Z. Sorry. I took Mr. Shobe's direction.
Put it down phonetically. It's a mess. Hi, council members. I'm Colton Zammersla. I'm representing Lincoln's, excuse me, Lincoln's Young Professionals Group. Address is 1128 Lincoln Mall, Suite 100. So today I'm representing Lincoln YPG in support of the proposed updates to Title 11 of the Lincoln Municipal Code. Lincoln YPG has been on the front line of this important workforce issue at the local and state level for many years, as we believe it creates a more inclusive and diverse workforce. As a community, we strive for a welcoming economy and know that fairness and equity are vital attributes that hold strong businesses and vibrant communities together. On January 1st, 2021, the Movement Advancement Project stated that there were 21 states, Washington, D.C., and at least 330 municipalities that fully and explicitly prohibit discrimination against LGBTQIA+ people in employment, housing, and public accommodations. Omaha is one of those municipalities with all those protections, and Omaha enacted their fairness ordinance in March of 2012. There's no reason Lincoln should be at a disadvantage to Omaha. Over the last decade, many advancements have been made, including U.S. Supreme Court rulings on workplace fairness and marriage equality. The proposed revisions of the city charter reflect today's current regulatory environment. Factors such as race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, military or veteran status should not be indicative of the services or advancement opportunities for individuals in our community. Our company should be rewarding employees on the basis of their hard work and merit, nothing else. Our organization believes that a diverse environment is critical for young professionals. Beyond that, the cornerstone of the community itself is based on the experiences, cultures, and beliefs of our citizens. According to a McKinsey study done in 2020, businesses that prioritize cultural diversity are 36% more profitable than those that do not. Business thrives when we have the best talent available in our community, and this charter change serves to protect the talent right here in Lincoln. As the city of Lincoln continues to grow, a welcoming environment is fundamental to our success. Inclusivity, equity, and acceptance are all important components of talent acquisition and retention, not just today, but into the future. We are committed to strengthening the city of Lincoln through creating an inclusive, supportive, and productive environment for all. And we ask you to join us by supporting the proposed updates to Title 11 in the Lincoln Municipal Code. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Questions?
Are there any questions from the council?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Karen Bell. On deck would be Susan Sorrente.
Good afternoon. Which microphone? This one? Good afternoon. My name is Karen Bell Dancy, Bell-DANCY. Thank you, City Council, for the opportunity to come before you today. I am representing not only myself, but more importantly, the YWCA of Lincoln. The YWCA of Lincoln have been in this community for over 135 years. Currently, we are located at 1701 South 17th Street. The mission of the YWCA Lincoln is the elimination of racism and the empowerment of women and the promotion of peace, freedom, dignity, and justice for all. We have enjoyed being a part of a national, actually a global association that has existed for over 168 years. Currently, our global association is going through an amendment for the charter that is going to add more inclusive language, in which we will continue to promote the mission and the mission impact that we have here, and we will mimic that language that is more inclusive. I am here today in support of fairness ordinances that has been introduced by City Councilwoman Washington. I would really like to express my gratitude to you for bringing this forward. The YWCA supports these updates to include sexual orientation and gender identity in the definition of sex to protect these characteristics under anti-discrimination law in the city of Lincoln. The YWCA strongly affirms that LGBTQ plus individuals should be able to participate fully and without discrimination in all aspects of life, including at work, at school, finding housing, and public and other venues. Further, the YWCA Lincoln is dedicated to putting an end to race-based hair discrimination. The proposed ordinance rightly includes natural hair texture and hairstyles as protected under race, consistent with Nebraska state law. Last year, we testified at the unicameral regarding that law, and we are proud that there was movement in a positive way to ingrain that within our state policy. We find it that race discrimination against women, and especially women of color, continues to exist, and these women, such as myself, face numerous barriers to success in the workplace, which are often enshrined in workplace policies and procedures, including dress codes that include permissible hairstyles. By explicitly including this protection, we can fight discrimination and racism and ensure that all Nebraskans can contribute to their communities and workplaces as their full selves. Although this provision is already part of state law, including the language in the city code, it sends the message that Lincoln would be a welcoming place that affirms that everyone has the right to simply be themselves without fear of retaliation, mistreatment, discrimination, or harassment. With that, I would like to say that the YWCA Lincoln offers its full support for the Fairness Ordinance, and we encourage City Council members to advance this proposal because it supports racial justice, gender equity, and LGBTQ plus rights. As an African-American woman that came to this community in 2006, I have found that Lincoln is now my home. I returned to my home state of Missouri and Kansas City, and I feel like a visitor there, but it's a very progressive city. I believe that Lincoln has the opportunity, as we continue to invite those that are coming from other states and other nations, that we want to retain that talent here. This is one way that we can ensure that happen. Too often we lose diverse folks that are in our community to go out into other areas, and we need to keep that talent here. So I'm hoping that this ordinance will be passed. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Susan Sorrente. Next would be Dale Williamson.
Good afternoon. My name is Susan Sorrente, and I live in the Taylor Meadows area at 1110 Rockhurst Drive. During the last few years, I have been a member of Fairness Lincoln, a group working to bring about the changes proposed in this revision to Title 11. I want to thank that group and the council members for their efforts and dedication to supporting rights in Lincoln. I speak as a member of that group, a resident of Lincoln, but also as a parent and grandparent. I have grandchildren who are in the group termed LGBTQ. I have a son who is in the military, or was in the military. He's now out. I have relatives with disabilities and friends here in all those categories also. I don't think I'm unusual. In other words, I'm like most of the people of Lincoln who also have friends and family in these groups who will be affected by this revision. This, then, is a revision that will touch many families and many lives in Lincoln in a positive manner. Because I believe justice matters, I want all people living or visiting in Lincoln to feel they are welcome and that their rights are protected. Not just for my family, but for all families, and this revision is a step in that direction. Our city has many positives, and now we will have this additional positive of Title 11 protections. We will be able to point to this revision as another positive because this change to the code enlarges our acceptance of humans as they are. I believe this needed change will both benefit present Lincoln residents in many ways and draw others to our city. Young professionals and their families, students, new residents, visitors, and longtime residents will experience Lincoln as a progressive, forward-thinking city that acknowledges and protects the rights of its citizens. Thank you, members of the City Council, who are for this change to our code to Title 11 revisions. And I request, please, that you vote for these changes that will bring about this greater good for the city. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Dale Williamson. Next would be Carl Eskridge.
Chairman Bowers and members of the council, I'm Dale Williamson, lived in Lincoln a long time. My address is 5315 Thies Cove Drive. It's a pleasure to appear before you today. Usually when I do years ago when I did a self-introduction, I would just say, Williamson, and I'm a soldier. And that's why I'm appearing today before you, because I'm an old soldier. And I'm really pleased that this amendment has added military personnel and veterans. That is excellent. Even though I'm only representing myself, I think I've got a strong force behind me representing that. Now, I've served 32 years in the United States Army and the Army National Guard. And oftentimes I tell people our slogan is retired but still serving. And we really do that. For years, I've served on the Fort Riley Retiree Council. We're doing a lot of work down there, and I'm so proud of what is happening this year 150 miles south of us. And it's very similar to what we're talking about today. It's a little advanced to what we're doing. The Fort Riley group is providing a venue that enables families to be more resilient by aligning opportunities of 5 dimensions of strength. I can go through those really rapidly. I'm just going to tick them off. Emotional strength, approaching life's challenges in a positive, optimistic way by demonstrating self-control, stamina, good character, and choices of your actions. Second one, family strength, being part of a family unit that is safe, supportive, and loving, and provides the resources needed for all members to live in a healthy and secure environment. Third item, physical strength, performing and excelling in physical activities that require aerobic fitness, endurance, strength, health, body composition, and flexibility derived through exercise, nutrition, and training. Spiritual strength, one's purpose, core values, beliefs, identity, and life vision. Spirituality draws upon personal, philosophical, and religious teachings and forms the basic of character. And finally, social strength. A tremendous point here with social strengths, developing and maintaining trusted value, relationships, and friendships that are personally fulfilling and foster good communications, including comfortable exchange of ideas and experiences. These all fit into what we're talking about today. Leadership leads the way. My thanks to the outstanding City Council that I have the opportunity to stand before today. for moving forward with this. And as been said before, Lincoln, we want to assure that Lincoln welcomes and respects everyone. Thank you for the time.
Thank you so much. Councilwoman Ward?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. General Williamson, I just want to thank you on behalf of my colleagues for your 32 years of service to our country, to our state, and to our community. That's a long time to serve, and I understand you've also, I know that you served with former General Colin Powell, so we're just delighted to have you in the chambers today. Thank you for being here.
Huzzah.
I had an opportunity to serve with General Powell when he was assistant commander of the 4th Division. We were both equal ranks then, and he did much better than I did.
That could be argued. Happy 91st birthday recently as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Carl Eskridge. Next would be Todd W. Wilton.
Afternoon, Carl Eskridge, ESKRIDGE, 128 North 13th Street. Chairperson Bowers, members of council, what a joy. What a joy it is to appear before you today for this effort to make our community a more loving and accepting place for all people. I want to thank Councilor Washington for your dedicated work, for your diligent work, and moving this forward after many conversations with your colleagues to get it right, and I think you've got it right, so thank you. So 10 years ago, I was up there where you are, and some of these same people were out here where they are. And as it was mentioned earlier, Omaha had just passed their ordinance, and Lincoln then was poised to do the same, and we did. The council voted 5-0 to support the fairness ordinance. There were 2 abstentions on the council at the time who indicated that there were constitutional issues, they felt. And so when voters came forward with petition results, then we had a choice as council members. We could vote to rescind the ordinance, and not a single council member was willing to do that. And we could also vote to put it up to the people, and we didn't think that was the right result either. So for 10 years, for 10 long years, we've been waiting. The constitutional questions, as we heard from the city attorney, have largely been resolved. The support in the community has been increasing. And after a 2-year-long pandemic, we have discovered how important it is to have a strong employment base within our community. And so employees and employers have merged in their support of this change. Over the last 20 years, Lincoln has experienced unprecedented growth. But for our growth to continue, Lincoln needs to attract more people. And some of those people are living in our community now. We just need to keep them here. And others want to come, but they need that assurance that Lincoln is indeed the loving and welcoming place that we claim to be. So thank you again for bringing this forward. I urge your support of it. I'll be glad to take any questions.
Are there any questions?
No, but thank you.
Councilwoman Ward?
Just again, former councilman Eskridge, I would be remiss not to thank you for being here, and you wear a great hat as having been there 10 years ago at this dais on this important issue. So thank you for coming back a decade later to express your views. And I know you wear another hat as a ordained pastor, and I think that expresses, and we've had other pastors come forward, and I know we will when we go to the opposition, that We'll talk about that as we debate this issue. But again, just would be remiss not to express gratitude. I know on behalf of all my colleagues that you are back here again today in support of this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Todd Wilton. Next, Moni Usaz.
Good afternoon. I'm Todd Wilchin. I'm here representing the Lincoln Chamber of Commerce, and I'm here to testify in support of the proposed ordinance revising the Equal Opportunity chapter of Lincoln's Municipal Code. In addition to being the right thing to strive for, we know that having a diverse workforce helps businesses acquire and retain the best talent, increase innovation, and improve their overall performance. As you talk to business leaders across our community, from small businesses to large companies, they will all tell you that Lincoln's workforce shortage has become a significant barrier to increased entrepreneurship and economic development. In recent years, the Lincoln Partnership for Economic Development has initiated recruitment initiatives, better known as boomerang campaigns, targeting former Nebraskans living in communities throughout the Midwest, including Kansas City, Denver, Minneapolis, Chicago, and Dallas. Every one of those communities already provide the equal opportunity protections proposed in this ordinance. With these same protections, Lincoln will continue to be at a without these same protections, Lincoln will continue to be at a disadvantage with these communities and others, including Omaha, as we compete to attract and retain a 21st century workforce. It is also important to note, as the city attorney has mentioned, federal law already exists and extends many of these protections contained in the proposed ordinance. This ordinance simply harmonizes our local municipal code with federal law, creating the opportunity to resolve complaints at the local level with the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights. The alternative would be attempting to resolve housing and workforce discrimination complaints with the Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity at the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Office of Civil Rights at the U.S. Department of Justice, or the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. All parties involved, including businesses and property owners, would benefit from the opportunity to resolve a complaint with a local Commission on Human Rights versus a large federal enforcement agency. Adopting this ordinance will send a message that Lincoln is truly a welcoming place to live, work, and play for all. Thank you for the opportunity. I would entertain any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Good evening.
Council members, thank you for your service. You've worked hard. It's been a hard few years. I'm Monty Eusis, 3340 South 31st, Lincoln. I'm testifying in favor of the revisions to Title 11. I'm here also as a historical perspective. I was here 40 years ago, in 1981, 41 years ago, when we pushed for lesbian and gay rights back then. First, the Human Rights Commission heard testimony, then there were 2 hearings before the City Council, and the issue ended up on the ballot. We lost 4-1, but while disappointed, we were not discouraged. We really hadn't expected to win. What we had expected to do was to increase the visibility of lesbians and gay men. 40 years ago, many people had not met anyone who was gay or lesbian, let alone thought about why we should have civil rights. Regardless, we were part of a nationwide sea change that led to a community awakening about the gays and lesbians amongst us. That led to gay marriage. That led to this moment, at this time, in front of the City Council. So please support the Title 11 revisions. Even though we have the right to marry, we don't have basic civil rights. A lot of straight people don't get that. At the age of 70, it seems way past time for the LGBT community to gain civil rights. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next is Maureen. Look at that. On deck would be Luke Peterson.
Good afternoon. My name is Maureen Ose, spelled O-S-E. My address is 1640 Twin Ridge Road, 68506. And today I am here on behalf of the League of Women Voters, the Lincoln Lancaster County chapter. And we are definitely in support of the proposed revisions to amend Title 11 of the Lincoln Municipal Code. The League of Women Voters is a 100-year-old, nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not support or oppose candidates or political parties. We work to increase understanding of major policy issues and to influence public policy through education and advocacy. We fight for an open governmental system that is representative, accountable, and responsive, and we hold elected officials accountable for the decisions they make. The League of Women Voters believes that all levels of government share the responsibility to provide equality of opportunity for education, employment, and housing for all persons in the United States, regardless of their race, ethnic, cultural, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic identity, gender, religion, national origin, age, or disability. Excluding people from full participation in society undermines the strength and vitality of our families, our communities, and our economy. Thank you for proposing these revisions to this important part of the municipal code. I urge you all to vote in support of this and would welcome any questions at this time.
Are there any questions? Seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Greetings, distinguished city council members. My name is Luke Peterson. That's Lukepeterson. I live at 2520 R Street. I've been a Lincoln resident now for about 15 years, maybe more. I actually want to say thank you for Sandra for introducing this. I really appreciate it. I actually have been fired before for being honest, as I like to call it. And it has affected me in a lot of ways in my life. One of those things is I actually came from work just now, but my job, before being hired to it, I specifically look for the equal opportunity clause of two phrases, sexual orientation and gender identity. You'd be amazed to know how many employers in Lincoln do not have that. It's very limiting. I wanted to come and testify and support and share just stories pretty much, because like the goldenrod owner, pastry owner, I don't have any prepared remarks, so I apologize. Some people may know that I did something a little courageous 4 years ago, and I put my name on the ballot, and I'm also one of the out elected officials of Nebraska. I ran for the Lower Platte South NRD. My words today are not indicative of what the board has done in recent months, but I do want to share the experience of when I first got elected. There was, I got acquainted with contracts. Every time there was a contract through the NRD, I had a copy of it, and going through the language, through the equal opportunity language, I saw that it was lacking again. So I took the initiative and said something to the entire board: we can do better. There are people who, through our subcontractors, are probably not straight, and they need to be protected just like everyone else. There was a vote on that revision for the NRD, And I still remember the day because there was no one really came to testify for it. I was a little shocked by that because I thought it would be something that would garner attention. But the vote, when it finally came down, was 17 in favor of the change to 1. And fortunately, the one person who voted against it got kicked off the board at the next election cycle. So I don't know if there is any opposition right now to change that back on the NRD. I can only imagine what you're going to hear pretty soon, but I think it's time. It's beyond time to do something for our loved ones, for our neighbors. No one should be fired to lose a house, to lose a loan based on who they are, for being honest. That's the message. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much for coming down.
Lacey Bott. Next is Harmony Allen.
Good evening. My name is Lacey Bolte. It's Laciebolte. I'm here representing Nebraska AIDS Project. We're at 127 South 37th Street, Suite A, here in Lincoln. I'm here asking you to update this municipal code. Thank you, Councilperson Washington, for bringing this forward. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for hearing us out today. This really just catches Lincoln up. I think you all know that. And it's something that we really need. I think it's important that you know that Nebraskans are facing discrimination here. Lincolnites are facing discrimination here, and we need this updated code to protect them. Nebraska AIDS Project is a nonprofit organization here in Lincoln and across the state of Nebraska. We support people living with HIV. We also provide prevention and education services to prevent HIV. And we serve folks from all walks of life. We serve veterans. We serve folks with natural hair texture. We serve the LGBTQ community. And all those folks that we love and we serve need protections here in Lincoln. There's been really great points made today from an economic perspective on why we need this updated, but I want to kind of bring a public health perspective. If folks don't have access to employment and to housing, we know it's going to be a lot more difficult for them to access health care, and so this is needed. We need this. Employment and housing are fundamentals for people to access health care, to access health insurance. And so I urge you to please update this language. The last thing I want to say is to all of our young people who are in the LGBTQ community, I'm sorry, I'm like getting choked up right now, but look around you at all these wonderful leaders on the council and examples and role models that you have, and everything else that's going to come. Like, don't listen to it, because you are loved and you are valued and we need you. So that's all. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Are there any questions? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you so much.
Harmony Allen. Harmony Allen, HARMONIIALLEN. I live at 2634 West Garfield Street, 68522. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come and speak to you. I stand before you as a member of many of the protected groups that will continue to be protected under this updated language. I'm a woman of color. I'm an ally to the LGBTQ community. I'm a veteran. I'm a veteran's wife, and I'm married to a widow who's also disabled. When my father visited me here, now that I've made Lincoln my home, permanent home, that I have a house that's paid for, that this is my home, I don't intend to leave. The reason that I stayed here was because I thought this was a wonderful place to raise a family. I thought, oh, my son who lives in North Carolina, the Bible Belt, he's gay. He can't live there peacefully and live his life and do the pursuit of happiness, liberty, and prosper in his life and meet his full potential, living his truth. But he could here. That's how I felt when I bought my home here. Given the environment that we now have outside of Lincoln, outside of Nebraska, this is a refuge. And this updated language makes that more true. People from all over have come to this town to stay. And this updated language will protect them. It'll give them a chance to live the American dream as we all know what that was meant to be. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that ought to be extended to everyone. We are all people first, and that gets lost. And for the conservatives, people who come from religious backgrounds, my father's a pastor, so I understand that side as well. From that side, I believe everything Jesus had to say. I understood Jesus' life. I am not saying that I have myself together, because I don't. None of us do. But I will say that one of the things that I read in the Bible is to love one another. That's in the red letters. That's Jesus. Love one another. This updated language does that. It helps us to love each other better in this world of hate, divisiveness, anger, frustration, etc. We need more love. This updated language will make Lincoln a loving place to stay, to live, and to grow. If we adopt this updated language, we will be a model for everyone in the United States and abroad from there of how to do this well. I don't just stand here for myself. I also work in juvenile probation. I see kids come through there that belong to these protected groups. They need to be protected. They don't all come from stellar families. I don't know anyone who comes from a stellar family. Do you? We all have messed up families. We all need protection. We all deserve the right to live. We all deserve the right to have a house, the right to eat, the right to work, the right to provide for your family, whatever your family looks like, whether it's 2 moms, 2 dads, a single mother, a single father, a grandmother, a grandfather. Today, this day and age, we have unconventional families. That doesn't make them less valid. That doesn't mean that they don't have love in them. 1 minute.
Thank you. I will entertain any questions at this time.
Are there any questions? Okay,
Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gina Frank. Up next is Gina Frank, then Anders Peterson.
Hi, my name is Gina Frank. I live in College View in Lincoln, and if you need my address for something, I'm happy to give it to you, but I don't really want to say it on the mic. I'm here to speak in support of the changes because I think regardless of like all the other reasons that this is good, which so many of them have been said, it's just really important that people have privacy. It's not anybody's business what someone else does in their bedroom or what they have in their underwear. Like, that's not anybody else's business. And so the fact that people feel like, and I grew up in it, the fact that people feel like it's their business to push their religion or their beliefs on someone else when it's not any of their business. I think that's just wrong. So I always support any anti-discrimination ordinances, and yeah, just happy to see these changes being made. So, and I'm happy to take questions if anybody has
Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anders Peterson.
Firstly, I just want to say I'm excited that she was able to read my handwriting, because historically I get a lot of flack for that. My name is Anders Peterson. I'm a school counselor here in Lincoln. I'm not here representing my employer LPS, but I'm here representing the children that I work with on a daily basis. I think for me, this legislation, this is all about really important work that I feel like is my charge in working with students, and that is making kids feel seen, making them feel heard, and making them feel like they matter. Making them feel like what they believe, what they think, where they're from, what their life is like is okay, right? And they can be accepted and loved for that. My work, I would say specifically in working with kids, is very much about trust. To be able to speak to an adult about something that maybe is really uncomfortable to talk about. Maybe something you don't want to talk to your own parents about. Those are things that without the trust that I facilitate in my relationships with my kiddos, then that to me will negatively impact their growth, and I don't know what sorts of other things come as a function of that. So for me, I believe really strongly in making sure that these kids feel like they're seen, that they're heard, that they're accepted. And in a school building, it's a pretty interesting place day to day, and with COVID and whatnot and just everything that's been different of late, this for me has become that much more important, because I think of how much it's forced us all kind of into like our own worlds and online and some different places maybe where there's a lot of stuff that's out there and stuff that you know that can be harmful. And so for me, I really would like to, as my work as a counselor, advocacy is a really big part of what we do. It's one of our really one of our 5 main I guess principles. I would like to read just a bit from our ASCAs, the American School Counselor Association. This is our professional organization that has professional statements, position statements on a lot of issues, including this. The school counselor and LGBTQ is what the language says here, youth. What this says, school counselors promote equal opportunity and respect for all individuals regardless of orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. School counselors recognize the school experience can be significantly more difficult for students with marginalized identities. School counselors work to eliminate barriers impeding LGBTQ student development and achievement. The rationale. Despite widespread efforts, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning LGBTQ students continue to face challenges that threaten their academic and social emotional development in schools. Students reporting feeling unsafe in school due to their sexual orientation, perceived gender orientation, gender identity, or gender expression, and report experiencing homophobic remarks, harassment, and bullying. LGBTQ individuals often face multiple risk factors that may place them at greater risk for suicidal behavior. School counselors realize these issues affect healthy student development and psychological well-being. The school counselor's role. The school counselor works with all students through the stages of identity development and understands this may be more difficult for LGBTQ youth. It is not the school counselor's role to attempt to change a student's sexual orientation or gender identity. School counselors recognize the profound harm intrinsic to therapies alleging to change an individual's sexual orientation or gender identity and advocate to protect LGBTQ students from this harm. School counselors provide support to LGBTQ students, promote academic achievement, and social emotional development. School counselors are committed to the affirmation of all youth regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, and work to create safe and affirming schools. School counselors counsel students with feelings about their sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as students' feelings about the identity of others in an accepting and non-judgmental manner, very important. Advocate for equitable educational and extracurricular opportunities for all students regardless of sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression. advocate for gender nonconforming students in regard to access of building facilities.
1 minute.
Thank you. Ensuring a safe environment for restroom use and changing, and gender presentation, for example, wearing dress or pants for an orchestra vocal performance. School counselors promote policies that effectively reduce the use of offensive language, harassment, and bullying, and improves climate. They address absenteeism, lowered educational aspirations, and academic achievement, and a low psychological well-being as a result of victimization and feeling unsafe at school. If this ordinance will do anything to make those kids feel safe where they are, then we have to do it, right? I mean, we all want that. We all want that for our loved ones. We all want that to feel safe, to feel like they matter, to feel like they're seen, to feel like they're okay. And that, to me, is really important work. I appreciate what you guys are doing in favor of that work, and thank you for letting me speak. If there's any questions, I would happily.
Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else here in favor in item 5F that would like to testify? One more call for any other individuals that are in favor for item 5F for testimony. Okay, we will now move on to our list of opposition. I will call first individual, Reginald M. Gill. Next would be Andrew H. Watson.
My name is Reginald Mark Gill. I live at 1621 Kennedy Drive here in Lincoln, and I'm here to speak in opposition to this this item right here, and maybe for a different reason than you would think. Okay, although my beliefs are Judeo-Christian, I'm a born-again follower of Christ. I've been both a supervisor in the military and in civilian capacity and within the postal service. So I've never let my personal faith beliefs cause me to make unfavorable decisions on someone that is of gay or lesbian or whatever gender orientation they have based on that. It's always been a matter of were they qualified, did they do a good job, did they put out equal work for the position that they were hired into. And that was it. That was it. Christ himself admonished his own error against the discrimination against the people from Samaria. Christ himself also called the Apostle Paul, who was an opponent of what they called the Way at the time, followers of Christ, to go and speak to the Gentile nations, which it was definitely not what you do. The Jews and Gentiles had nothing to do with each other. They looked at each other as, diametrically opposed, antithetical to each other's existence. So that's not why I'm here speaking today. I have my own moral beliefs, but that's also not what my comments will regard today. My beliefs right here is that be very careful as you attempt to root out any area where there's even an inch of possibility of discrimination. Be very careful how you go about it. And I'm approaching this primarily from a safety aspect. You're talking about safety for the lesbian, gay, and I cannot pronounce all the letters they have, but you know what I'm talking about. The LGBTQ plus whatever community. Okay, I'm for not punishing or discriminating. I'm for not physically assaulting or verbally bullying those. I'm not for punishing and discriminating against anyone for whatever reason. If I was a pastor hiring someone into the church in a role that had moral implications, it would be different. But I'm not in that position. So today I'm addressing it from a safety aspect. We need to look around what's going on in this country and be very careful as we approach this. Various communities, and the one I'm going to use right now is in Loudoun County, Virginia. Okay, they enacted laws similar to ordinances similar to what you're proposing today, and I think they didn't do due diligence in the protective aspect of it. When what happened was a male who was probably not a member of the LGBT community, but he used the laws that they had there as a loophole to give him access to areas he had no business in. Because he put on a skirt and a wig and he went into the bathroom there in the high school and he brutally raped a young female student there. The school district, rather than deal with it directly and say, well, we probably didn't provide adequate protection for the other group of people, they covered it up and they just quietly transferred this individual to another school district. Kind of like what we see some denominations doing now for sexual crimes. At any rate, when this male student was transferred into another school within the district, he again raped and sodomized another female student in the girls' bathroom at that school. The father of the first victim of this predator, Scott Smith. Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Scott Smith, he went in, he was very angry because they had allowed this to happen to a second child after his was brutalized. And the board members wrestled that individual down, Scott Smith down, arrested him, restrained him, took him out of the meeting. He got labeled as a domestic terrorist. So as you consider doing this to put some more anti-discriminatory laws in place or codes in place, be very careful that you don't also create a loophole that allows those that have nothing to do with what you're trying to do, but are nothing more than predators and seekers of opportunity, to go in and do this. We had a national retailer here in the United States that opened up the restrooms to whatever gender you decided you were. They got a lot of backlash about it, and I'll give you a case in point. My wife went into the restroom of this retail outlet. There was a male in there who had a cell phone.
We're at 5 minutes, so we can please wrap it up. Thank you.
He had a cell phone there, and when he saw that there were other women coming in there and he was caught in there with a camera, he started to wash his hands as if he was just finishing up and leaving. So we're walking a thin line here between protection of one group and the protection of another. So be very careful as you attempt to bring in this code change. Until you do more homework in the area there, I'm going to have to speak in opposition to this. Not because I have an axe to grind, but to protect both sides of the house. And thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Andrew Watson, 2237 Ryan Street here in Lincoln. I want to come up here today to ask y'all to vote against this perverse Marxist proposal, which is an attempt to normalize a crime against nature and a crime against nature's God, which we have long recognized. Before I begin, I just want to say one thing about, the mayor was in here earlier, and I think this is sort of indicative about the deception that's being used about some of the commenters in here. She said that, it'd be so great if we could pass this for St. Valentine's Day, because that would be very appropriate. St. Valentine was a Catholic bishop martyr who was murdered for his standing up for the truths of the faith. And it's very deceptive and perverse to say that, Valentine's Day, and we'll invoke the name of St. Valentine's in defense of this moral perversity that he would be abhorred to be associated with. Furthermore, we've had prior commenters come in and they've talked about how this is a matter of equal protection under the law and equal rights, pretending that not everybody in the country has equal rights under the law, but that's not true. Everybody in this country does have equal rights. Some exceptions, felons lost their right to bear arms. But anybody, no matter what they say their sexual orientation is, has every right that I have. What they're asking for is an additional right. They're asking for some new thing, long recognized as a crime, to be added to those list of things that they wish to be able to do with the sanction of society. So it's not about equality under the law. They have equality. They're asking for a change to the moral structure that society has long imposed upon ourselves. The reason that this is important is because the law is a teacher. It has a magisterial role, and it forms the people who live under a certain regime. And it mostly forms those who are most formable and malleable, which are the youth. And so the law is like a mold into which the raw material of the citizenry and the youth are cast into whatever shape is imposed upon it. So we've had previous commenters talk about how they don't want to impose some sort of system of beliefs upon anybody, and that's why they are opposed to, or they're in favor of this change. But the law necessarily imposes a structure of belief, a philosophy upon people who live underneath it. So there's not a neutral option here. For society to sanction this is a tacit acceptance of the normalcy and the legitimacy of these sorts of actions and behaviors. So that's a canard that I would warn you not to be deceived by. But the reason that this proposal is being forwarded is because of that reason, because it will form the youth. And those who are supporting it they're taking a role which is a role of a perverter of the youth of society. And from Scripture we know that Christ, our Lord, says that for someone who corrupts or perverts the youth, it is better for that person to be cast into the sea with a millstone tied about their neck. And the council members should keep that warning of our Lord in mind when they think about how they're going to vote upon this proposed change, and not risk their souls for the sake of proceeding along the easy road. It's going to be harder to vote against this rule because society endorses this change, and you'll face opprobrium and censure for voting according to what is actually right rather than what is popular. But I'd warn you that the path to hell is very, very broad, and many go that way. And the path to doing what's right is narrow, and it's difficult, and it's going to be unpopular. And rather, you should act like perhaps St. Valentine would have acted in this situation, rather than in accordance with what's easy. Finally, just the last point I want to make is that the board actually has no authority to make a law such as this, because Christ is the King of the universe. Christ is the King of the United States. Christ is the King of Lincoln. Christ is the King of every single person in the world and of all communities and societies and states. And lesser magistrates have no authority to make a law that is in flagrant violation of the divine law and in flagrant violation of the laws of nature. And to do so would be an act of illegal rebellion against the moral law. And so I would urge you to please not vote in favor of this change, and do not participate in the perversion of our youth. That's a serious crime.
1 minute.
The ancients recognized this. Socrates, unjustly, was condemned to death to drink hemlock for committing a crime like this. Keep that in mind. Do not vote in open rebellion against God and to endanger our youth. Remember that Christ is King, and no arrogant presupposition on our part can erase that ultimate fact. And ultimately, we will stand before him as our judge. And that concludes my comments. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you. Please refrain from having outbursts. This is supposed to be a conversation.
I will be calling, we have one other individual that needs to come up in favor. I had closed off that portion too quickly, not enough time for her to get up here. So up next is, I'll let you introduce yourself. I didn't catch your name, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I apologize for being late. I had another obligation and got here as quickly as I could. My name is Milo Winslow. I live on Randolph Street. I am a transgender man. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I've lived in Lincoln for just shy of 6 years. Lincoln is by far the most accepting city that I've lived in, and it has been here that I have finally been able to accept my truth and come to know who I am. Recognizing that I am a man has given me the ability to begin to truly feel comfortable in my own skin, but this journey has not been an easy one. I had to unlearn internalized transphobia. I had to do extensive work in therapy, and I had to find self-acceptance in ways I'd never known before. I was fortunate to live in this city and have access to resources that I needed on this journey here. This city has given me so much, and yet there's a sense of fear that comes with living here. I have been fortunate in areas where others have not been. For the last year and a half, I've worked a contract job with a company that supports transgender people. So I have not had to fear losing my job since legally changing my name and coming out as transgender. I have lived in my apartment for 2.5 years, and I am fortunate to have landlords who have expressed support for the LGBTQ+ community from the beginning of my knowing them. This has meant that I have not moved because I have not wanted to have to worry about finding other affirming landlords for fear that my queerness might lead to my losing my home. I have carefully orchestrated my life and my surroundings so that I can feel safe and live without fear of retaliation based on my gender and sexual experiences. This is something that's taken time and energy, and honestly, no one should have to focus this much on just making sure that they are safe from eviction or losing a job just for being who they are and loving who they love. This type of fear and orchestration, it's not an unfamiliar experience for those of us who are LGBTQ+. It is time that we as a society wake up to the understanding that just because someone has come to their experience differently than most people, that doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with that person. Society would crumble if we all fit into the same molds. We can't all work the same types of jobs, reside in identical homes, or live cookie-cutter lifestyles. Our diversity is what makes us thrive. I hope that with this ordinance, we as a city can make the decision to allow all residents to thrive here. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you so much. We are at 2 minutes till 5, so we're going to recess until 5:10, and we will stand in recess until 5:10.
one giant leap for Shobi.
Okay, folks, we're back in session. If folks can start finding their seats.
I don't want to be a Lego.
So we are still in the public hearing section of 5F. When your name gets called to come and provide public comment, please come up and state your name and your address. Testimony will be limited to 5 minutes. There will be a 1-minute beeper that goes off to let you know that there's 1 minute remaining. Also, as a reminder, in order to maintain decorum and to maintain order in the council chambers, to make this a safe and respectful process for everyone, no outbursts are allowed. If there are outbursts inside the chamber, our Sergeant at Arms, Inspector Parkle, will ask you to leave. So let's go ahead and continue on with the next person.
Okay. Next would be Tom Nebelsick. On deck would be Lynn Brennan.
Good afternoon, Lincoln City Council members. My name is Tom Nebelsick, Nebelsick. I live at 6125 The Knolls, right here in Lincoln, Nebraska. While it seems like just yesterday we were here, it's been 10 years since the so-called Fairness Ordinance was last run up the flagpole. I was here for that. Talk about persistence, huh? I changed the order of my remarks as I listened to the testimony that's been given. And it's my opinion, and mine alone, that homosexuality will never be normalized. And by that I mean I don't think a lot of people are going to walk up and congratulate you for being a homosexual, or a participant in any of all those letters that go together, LGBT, whatever it is that goes with that. At the same time, I don't think there's an overwhelming desire on most people's part to denigrate or demean people who have chosen to go in that direction. For those of us that believe in biblical principles, that's not a path that we can go down. I think you've all heard that before. You know what our response is to being asked to accept homosexuality as being normal. I think you know the problem that is for us. So, having stated that, I'm here to express my opinion, my opposition to changing the city charter language, specifically redefining sex to sexual orientation and gender identity. I would echo Mark Gill's comments about being careful how you decide to move language and so forth to accomplish the goal that you're after. I would like to remind City Council members that existing laws already protect citizens of their sex, regardless of their sex, as adequately addressed by the Civil Acts Right of 1964 that states discrimination is based on race, color, religion, sex, national origin is outlawed. Consequently, there is no need to advocate for special rights via changing terminology and language. As elected officials, I would appreciate you steering away from pursuing solutions in search of a problem. Instead, I recommend you focus on pressing issues such as the sad state of affairs in our community, such as the decay in functionality and morale of our local law enforcement, which truly makes our lives unsafe. Additionally, we continue to suffer from poor road maintenance in spite of continually rising taxes. Having said that, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next is Lynn.
Good afternoon. Lynn Brennan, 7525 West Rio Road, 68505. I'm here also in opposition to the changes. And Lincoln is a place of freedom, and that's why I came back here to my homeland from California. And all lives matter, and Lincoln is for everyone. We already have laws in place that for respect regardless of sexual orientation or gender identity. But when men self-identify as a female, they should not have access to private spaces that are designated specifically for biological women, such as restrooms and locker rooms. This, having been done in other cities, has caused serious, severe problems. So I encourage you all to keep the faith, vote no. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Up next is Robert K. Close, thank you.
Robert Klotz, 600 West Broadview Drive, Lincoln, Nebraska. 11 o'clock today, I was informed of this hearing. I did read the ordinance, and this is my candid response. This is billed as an ordinance of fairness. If it were fair, then allow an organization falsely sued to force the complainant to pay all legal fees. This ordinance ignorantly redefines terms to meaninglessness in order to codify and advance sexual perversion and hedonism. The ordinance says that disability shall mean, and then includes things which is a process, such as thinking, which is a process of reasoning, as well as reproductive functions, and puts them all together as disability. But why? Well, simply, if you disagree with someone's sexually perverted thinking, they can sue you. In short, churches beware. The ordinance says gender identity or expression shall mean an individual's actual or perceived gender. So now we're codifying insanity as people with delusional thinking perceive themselves to be something they are not. When I worked on a mental health unit, I was told by the psychologist that we were not to play into the delusions of individuals so that they could be helped to see reality. This ordinance wants to confirm people in their delusions. Shame on you. The ordinance defines race. Race shall mean race, ethnic group identification, and ethnic background, etc., etc. You don't use a word to define itself. And by adding ethnicity into the mix, race means absolutely nothing, since it means everything and anything. Same is true with the definition of sex in this ordinance. It means absolutely nothing, since it includes everything. Sex means, and I quote, female, male, neither or both. If you wrote this in a third grade paper, you would get an F for reasoning skills. The Commission on Human Rights is to present the community, not the citizens. Citizen is crossed out. In other words, they represent the community. In other words, any illegal alien can make an imagined complaint against someone, and the citizen has to waste their money, taking it from one pocket to defend themselves while taking money from the other pocket to be used by the illegal alien via the commission, which is supported by taxes. Why is the commission charged with aiding and abetting criminals? This is a horrible ordinance in place. It is quite nonsensical and not in the best interest of the citizens of Lincoln. Any questions?
Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming down.
Next is Herb Welter.
Thank you, council members, for allowing me to speak today. My address is 8750 Garland Street. And I basically threw some stuff together on some note cards. So my stuff might be just random, but it's there. First, I want to establish that I don't hate anybody, and I don't judge anybody. Anybody knows me, they realize I don't hate anybody. I have some black friends. I know some gay people. I know all kinds of people. And I don't hate a single person on the face of the earth. And I'm not judging anybody. I am simply informing. All sexual activity is a behavior. I want to repeat that. All sexual activity is a behavior. We have a society that looks at this and then just throw anything out there. But all sexual activity is behavior. Simple as that. And that's where you got to start. When is our society going to know that we have to have individual responsibility? If I have a dog and I let him go outside and he jumps over the neighbor's fence and he just digs holes every time, who's responsible for that? I am. If I have a tree in my front yard that has the limbs hanging down 4 feet over the sidewalk, who's responsible for cutting those limbs off? I am. If I buy a house in a floodplain that gets flooded 3 times a year, or if let's start over with that. If I buy some land in a floodplain and I decided to build a house there and I know it gets flooded 3 times a year, just like clockwork, who's responsible for that? We have to have individual responsibility, as simple as that. We live in a society thinking that nobody can change. The best example we have of anybody changing that I can just recollect right now is Paul on the road to Damascus. He changed. He was killing people of the way. Homosexuals can change. The Lincoln Public School System, they did this purple penguin thing here a few years back. It didn't go over well. It was a disaster. They figured the parents got upset because there was massive confusion. The State Board of Education tried to make health standards change here just last year. What was that? It was a disaster. We talked, the mayor said something about the Big Ten schools and all that, and having their policies of Title 11 implemented and all that. Big deal if the Big Ten does all this. If they jump off a cliff, well, you're going to do the same? Don't be deceived. God is not mocked. Whatever man sows, he reaps. That's in Galatians 6:7. These are not my words. I'm just telling you what it says, and I'm not judging anybody. We have pastors that speak the word, but they don't speak the word. We have to realize what Scripture says. Satan has his ministers who disguise themselves as Satan. First of all, Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, and he has ministers who do the same. Matthew 4:4 says, Jesus is told Satan in the out in the wilderness, man shall live by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. He's tried to change what God ordained in Genesis 1:26 and 7. He made man and woman in his image. He didn't make anything else. What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? People know about that. God is not going to change his perspective on that. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's not ever going to approve of that lifestyle. We just have to read in Romans 1 what a man should not be lying with a man or a woman lying with another woman.
1 minute.
We also have the problem with the bodies thinking they can just change the law, as the gentleman indicated earlier. It was the Supreme Court who, in 1973, thought that it was a good idea that we can have abortions. Why don't we address things that where they are? We got 60 million babies that died. That's the brain drain, not the people who leave the state. If they can't determine what is right and wrong, let them leave the state.
There will be no outbursts. If there are outbursts, Inspector Parker will ask you to leave. I am not going to let this turn into a circus. This is going to be a respectful process where all citizens, regardless of their beliefs, will be heard and not interrupted. Thank you.
Up next is Lance M. On deck would be Samuel Lyon.
Good afternoon, City Council. My name is Lance McCord. I didn't have a lot I've got just handwritten notes here, but I am opposed to the ordinance. I was here 10 years ago when the Fairness Ordinance was proposed and passed by the City Council, and then myself, many others were involved in gathering signatures to have it put on the ballot and so on, and then it was tabled. So we have, as somebody said, we've been down this road before. I am against the ordinance very much. I'm for people. I'm not against anybody who says that they're gay, lesbian, in a same-sex relationship. I'm for people. As the gentleman earlier said, I don't hate anyone. I care, love all people. But that doesn't mean we accept, obviously, everything that people do. As far as this ordinance, it concerns me where anytime we're redefining definitions, we're redefining sex, meaning something other than what it is as God created it, male, female. When we're redefining definitions, it's not for us as humans to define what sex is. God created men and women. He created it. Somebody can object and say, well, there's many religions, there's many beliefs people have, and that's true, but there's still the issue of what is the truth, and what's the truth about human sexuality and mankind. What's the truth? And we have to think through these issues as people individually. We have to think through these things as a community, as a nation. Who am I? What's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of sexuality? I mean, we don't define this. I mean, God created the universe. Now, again, not everybody's, there's people, of course, in our society who don't believe in God and so on, but we still have to have, for any society, we come up with definitions, we come up with rules, behaviors, things that are acceptable or not. We make those decisions as a people. And where do we come up with the idea of what's true, or what is sexuality? What's appropriate or not? I mean, in ancient Greek civilization, it was acceptable for men to have sex with boys. You look at throughout history, it was acceptable cannibalism's practiced, child sacrifices. So what's okay or not? I mean, where do we get our definitions, our standards for what's right and wrong? And I believe very strongly that we have to look to what God has revealed in the Bible. And historically, our nation has been impacted very deeply by the Bible and by the Judeo-Christian faith. The state of Nebraska Constitution says that refers to God Almighty. Okay, it doesn't refer to Allah or Buddha and so on and so forth. It refers to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So I've been, as some of you have, I've traveled other countries. I've been to Southeast Asia, Buddhist nations. Okay, they believe in Buddha. Laws surrounding Buddhism. I don't agree with that philosophy, but again, it's not wrong to have to make a decision about what's true and how you're going to order your life and what behavior is appropriate or not. And like I said, historically, the Judeo-Christian faith, the Bible has impacted our society. The founders, James Madison says that James Madison, who's referred to as the chief architect of the Constitution, he says that we've staked the whole future of our civilization not on the power of government, far from it. He says we've staked it on the ability or the capacity of all of us for self-government, the ability of us to govern ourselves, control ourselves according to the Ten Commandments of God.
1 minute.
So obviously with the early Americans and even those who formed the state of Nebraska, the Judeo-Christian faith played a very significant role. But again, to get away, when we start redefining things that God created, like sexuality, we're going to create all sorts of problems and get into all sorts of dangerous things. I think that we've seen, when it comes to sexuality and what's okay, and people get caught up in all sorts of behaviors that are destructive when we start messing around with the things of God. So those are some of my thoughts. And I'm very much against the ordinance. I'm very much for people, but I want to just encourage the city council to stand for standards that are biblical and that have proven to provide a solid basis for our country and our state.
Thank you so much.
Samuel Lyon. On deck would be Lee Todd.
Samuel Lyon, Lincoln, Nebraska. Address on file. If I'm being honest today, I'm a little disappointed. I'm a little frustrated. See this fairness ordinance come through the second time around. I prefer to think that people in general try to make their environment better. And I hold that opinion of you. I think that you believe the actions that you choose to make us better. And make Lincoln better for those who live in Lincoln. But the way we go about change is important. The mayor stated earlier today that there hasn't been a change to the civil rights provisions in 25 years. But that's not the whole story, is it? Because sprinkled into the testimonies, we hear how 10 years ago, there was a change. Now, I understand the mayor's new here. Maybe she hadn't heard about it. But as Carl Estridge testified 10 years ago, when he was also new here, there was a similar legislation passed called the Fairness Ordinance. Very similar. In fact, the same ordinance. 5-0 with 2 abstaining, he testified. Well, it passed, ready to go into law, but something happened. The citizens of Lincoln said, we don't like this ordinance. We think this ordinance is not right for Lincoln. And so they started a referendum, a petition. And if enough signatures are gathered for that petition, they could block what the city council voted to do. And that's what happened. They gathered over 10,000 signatures in less time than was required and blocked the city council's actions. At that point, city council has 2 options. They can rescind that legislation that they had just passed, or they can put it to a vote of the people. As Carl Estridge testified, they chose to do neither. Instead, they just shelved it. They didn't do what they were required to do. They didn't do, quote, the right thing. Why? Why not put it to a vote of the people? Do they not trust the city of Lincoln to make the right choice? Do they not trust the voters to make the proper decision? It's just a very simple process. Just put it on the ballot. We've had 10 years of elections, 10 years of ballots. Any one of them, you could just put it on the ballot and let the people of Lincoln decide. As the city attorney testified earlier, 50 years ago, Lincoln voters were given the opportunity to amend the charter and give protections to previously unprotected classes. And what did they do? They approved those protected classes. But yet now, 10 years ago, I don't think that the city of Lincoln, I don't think that those people are capable of making the right decision as the charter requires. So let's just pretend we don't know the rules, shelve it. 10 years go by, and here we have a new city council, a new mayor. One of the city council members was quoted as, "This is the right thing to do." Well, I think the right thing to do would be to put it to a vote of the people.
1 minute.
Let the people decide. That's what the charter requires. That's what the charter required 10 years ago, and that's what the charter requires today. I could see that you were a little frustrated when people were clapping because they weren't following the rules. But yet, who is our example? You are the example. And when you don't follow the rules, what example does that give to us to follow your rules? This is your opportunity to set a good example to us and put it before a vote of the people to let them decide. They made the proper choice 50 years ago. Don't you trust them to make the proper choice today? Let them decide what safety is. Let them decide whether they feel safe in this or not. Because the vote of the people are going to have to be who deals with the next 50 years if this legislation passes. Put it to a vote of the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Next is Lee Todd. On deck would be Mary Hamilton.
Councilman, Councilwoman, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Lee Todd, I've lived in Lincoln since 1981 and enjoy being here. There are some issues in our city. I'd like to talk a little bit about maybe some opening premises that we can all agree on. Nobody wants to put innocent people in harm's way. I think if I would look at every single one of us, we would sit down and have that discussion. We would say, absolutely, that's a correct statement. I've got a 12-year-old daughter. She walks into a bathroom, and I've got some guy in there who's 83, 42, whatever years old. And it's my understanding that this ordinance gives that guy a permission to go in there. It's his right because he feels a certain way that day. And how he feels today on, what is today, Monday, he can feel differently on Tuesday. I didn't know that sex changed like that. I didn't know that my XY chromosome suddenly changed to XX on a Monday and then they changed to XY back on a Wednesday. This arbitrary floating around, it's like ice flow. Who knows where the stability is? Where is the what is the foundational source? What is rock solid about this community that's holding it together? Now we completely obliterate what sex is, and yet we all agree that everybody should feel safe. Okay, let's talk about the 12-year-old girls, the 10-year-old girls that are in these bathrooms. And this is happening now in the United States. Are every single one of you, despite what legal counsel is saying, you're not culpable for this decision? If you make this ruling, you're not to be blamed if something happens, if these girls get raped. You're off the hook. You're off the hook. You're off the hook. Just because you voted for the ordinance, you're no longer culpable. I bet you're not when you look in the mirror and you say to myself, whoa, I voted for that. That guy raped her. We didn't have to go down this path. I would like to reiterate that there are already, and I'm proud to be a conservative. Last time I checked, in 1964, the Civil Rights Acts, that was passed primarily because of Republican legislatures promoting that act. Ku Klux Klan, where did that come from? Do your history. Who are the people that are standing up for what has made this country successful? I like things that are solid. I can pass on to the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. It makes a lot of sense. My world, I have problems. Everybody has them. But my gosh, I've got something that's rock solid to count on. I am so happy to be born in this country. I am so appreciative of it. I am so thankful of it. I remember as a little boy, I would go to bed at night and I would think of the gumball machine. And the gumball machine rolls around and then God lets the lever go and the gumball drops down and it's like a roulette reel and you end up in the United States. And I thought, oh my gosh, I am so happy to be here. It's a wonderful place to be here. So I would ask you, if you're going to pass an ordinance like this, why are we giving special exemptions, special privileges? My wife is from Russia. Why don't we give Russians who came from Russia, why don't we give them special privileges? I don't get it. I really don't. So Carl Eskridge made some points. I was like, wow, former city council member. And I think we know, honestly, why we're not really turning this over to a vote of the people. Maybe you feel you have the power to do it. Okay. But you have responsibilities, and these decisions will have long-term ramifications. I agree with earlier testimony. We need to be looking at what is going on in the police department. Those are the people that keep me safe. I want to be able to call and know they're going to be there. That's what I want to know. As far as putting this to a vote of the people, I think that's a great question.
1 minute.
I think you should be asking yourselves, why don't we allow the people to make a decision? I think a lot of you know, like I know, I don't think this would pass. I think it would go down maybe 40, 60, I believe. That's a wild guess. Why don't we find out? I'm willing to load my dice, if you will, on the people of this city and see where they. I think somebody once said you'd have better luck throwing darts at the phone book to come up with stock picks than maybe rely on the so-called experts. So there are a lot of things I think that we really ought to be considering here. I hope that you will consider them. I think there's a lot of inconvenient truths that are out there right now. And I don't think the truths are matching up with what your intent is. I don't know. I can't read your hearts. I don't know who you are. A lot of you I don't even know. Okay? I don't. And I admit that. But I think in your heart you need to look at what really are we doing, and is this really legislation or a statute that is looking for a problem that doesn't exist? I don't think there's a problem here. I'm sorry, I don't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Todd.
Next is Mary Hamilton. On deck would be Amber Parker.
Hi, I'm Mary Hamilton, and I live in Lincoln, and I'm here today to make my voice heard against this Fairness Act that is being proposed by the City Council. First of all, there's nothing fair about this act. Until now, women's rights have been protected by our Constitution, but by adding the word gender, it undermines all diversity-based gender rights. I'm not going to stand up here as a woman created by God and let you tell me that just because you proposed this kind of nonsense 10 years ago and it was rejected, that we are prepared to go along with it now. What would this mean for my daughter, my granddaughters, my mothers, my aunts? Would they be subjected to males being able to enter facilities for changing, showering, or using the toilet in the name of equity? This proposal ignores common sense by giving men who claim to be female unfettered access to intimate places designated for women. This places women in vulnerable states, physically and sexually, where they become greater targets by males by virtue of being unclothed. 1 out of every 2 women will be a victim of unwanted sex act in their lives. Males perpetuate 99% of sexual violence against females. Video voyeurism is at epidemic levels. Just recently, you heard the other gentleman speak of what happened. I just found out today that in California this summer, after they passed the same thing that you are trying to do here, that there were women, several instances of women that a man exposed himself in the bathroom of a spa. And the spa are the ones that are responsible, and they can't do anything about it because of the law. So they said to the people that were rejecting this, they said, well, we're sorry, we can't do anything about it because the law is there. to protect these people so we can't do anything about this man, even though he was exposing himself, along with the rapes and other things that might happen. Discrimination is not discrimination. Disagreement is not discrimination. These policies take away constitutionally guaranteed freedoms and provoke intolerance toward people who have different belief systems than those in political power. There are many citizens of Lincoln who do not want this secular humanism religion pushed on us, and if you expect us to worship at the altar of this depravity and confusion, you are sadly mistaken. Our culture has accepted two huge lies. The first one is that if you disagree with someone's lifestyle, you must fear or hate them. The second is that to love someone means you agree with everything they believe or do. And I just want to say, you know, I have friends and I have people that I get along with, and in this climate, I do not think that people are having trouble getting jobs. I really don't. I mean, there's signs everywhere where people are needing help. And I don't think anybody is going to, especially in Lincoln, Nebraska, is going to say, oh, you can't work here because of your lifestyle. I really don't believe that. There's another thing, you know, I am a Christian. I believe in what the Bible says. And in Isaiah 5:20, it says, woe to those who call evil good and good evil. And that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next is Amber Parker. On deck would be Brenda McGill.
Hello, City Council members. There's a lot of emotions right now running through me. I grew up in a very physically abusive home. And one thing that was clear when I read through 67 pages of this ordinance, my first question is, did you all read every single page? Because I went through and I did. I stayed up till 3:49 a.m. this morning reading it. You have disability, talking about dogs to help people, animals, and things like that. The part I want to talk about tonight is I'm against the Title 11F. As a woman, I cannot imagine in the abuse that I grew up in. As a little girl, I had trauma of being in a school bathroom. I would picture a man coming in the bathroom and following me. I'm a grown woman. I'm a concealed permit carrier. I have a gun. I do protect, and I am a law-abiding citizen. And I will protect myself. Because of the abuse that I went through, as a woman, I hope you can understand that I made that determination. I will never be a victim again. With this said, on Valentine's Day for Mayor Baird, to say we want to pass this Title 11, what about those who have been abused? What about those women who have been raped? What about the situations where there are other states that pass these sexual orientation, gender identity laws, where a man sat out, spread eagle around 6-year-old girls, law enforcement was called and they wouldn't even arrest him? Furthermore, your civil penalties, the City Council. I went through our Constitution of the United States of America and I focused on 3 amendments. I'm not going to list them all. But this is the wording you guys want to protect. Sexual orientation shall mean an individual's emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction or non-attraction to individuals of a different sex, the same sex, or more than one sex. How in the world are you planning to protect emotional, romantic, or sexual attraction? Do you realize pedophiles, there are pedophiles that recognize themselves as sexual orientation? Do you realize what you're adding in this? The constitutionality alone of what I've read, I want to focus on this. So the Commission on Human Rights, the manager of the Lincoln Commission on Human Rights, nor the mayor cannot act as a grand jury. The Constitution of the United States of America is very clear. But I question, is this exactly what they are doing in this commission? The Lincoln Commission of Human Rights, and if you focus on Amendment 5 of the Constitution of the United States of America, I'm strongly concerned as well and alarmed that the Lincoln Commission of Human Rights has set a foundation, to force one to be a witness against himself. This is unconstitutional. And furthermore, the commission, the way this is written, is declaring people guilty before they have a chance in front of a grand jury to prove their innocence. You can't do this. The Mayor Baird is not a grand jury. This Lincoln City Commission of Human Rights cannot be a grand jury. According to the Constitution of the United States of America, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. The way the Human Rights Commission is set up and what I have read is very concerning. You guys can charge someone up to $10,000 if a business owner would refuse a man to walk in after a woman and child in that bathroom and stand against it. They could have the complaint against them. And they already have lost their due process the way this commission is set up.
1 minute.
The commission is set up in the way that it sets up the businesses already as criminals by taking away their due process. And just as the example I had given, as a restaurant owner, any public accommodations wanting to protect women and children and denouncing a man to go into a woman's restroom or locker room. The commission is set up, and I'm very concerned that it is deeming people guilty, and they're acting as a court, and I would question by the participation of the city attorney to even pursue a civil action lawsuit that you guys could also be aiding in double jeopardy.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you. Next is Brenda McGill. On deck is Fanshawn Blythe.
Yep, either one's okay.
Hello, my name is Brenda from Lincoln. Public accommodations. Is this referring to school bathrooms and locker rooms? Is this gym locker rooms? Is this even referring to domestic violence women's shelters or homeless shelters where men and women, boys and girls are separated for obvious safety reasons, not to mention liability concerns for local businesses? We must consider what this is actually saying, although, interestingly, it doesn't actually say much of anything. In all that paperwork, all that's specified are the two words, public accommodations. Where's the transparency? Just say what's really being done to our community. Today, I will demonstrate to you that sex is biologically defined. It's defined as male or female. Any other definition is not factual and is therefore contrived. Sex is male or female. Gender is sex expressed and observed. Gender as a social construct is not an oppressive structure placed upon society, but rather it is the term we use to identify the simple observations that people made of their own families way back. Imagine the very first families, the very first communities. Procreation was everything. Protecting the children from attacking tribes or nations meant protecting the women too. The girls and women could not be expected to protect themselves. The strong, skilled, brave, and motivated men had to protect them. This observation was similarly true when more ordinary situations were considered. These fundamentals to procreation is the basis of our modern understanding of gender. Sex is male or female. Gender is sex expressed and observed. What do we observe? While men tend to be assertive, women tend to be nurturing. Men tend to be risk-taking, women self-preserving. Men tend to be practical, women tend to be intuitive. These are observations. Have you heard it said, if you can't change your circumstances, change your perception of it? Have you heard this? Well, these are observations, facts even. Why are we so eager to label gender as oppressive? Maybe the problematic matter doesn't reside within our definition of sex, but rather in our perception of it. Not a boy or a girl thinks she's a boy who thinks he's a girl, different sexual orientations, all of it. All of it is behavior, not biology. Behavior is always communicating something. With these behaviors, are there needs being unmet? What are they? Is there underlying fear or pain? What are they? These are difficult and personal things for young people to navigate, for anyone to navigate. And to navigate these things, we must teach these principles. Never make any decisions out of a state of fear. Never make any decisions out of a state of pain. Instead, resolve to not make any declarations or decisions until after you have spent ample time relieving the fear you hold and healing the pain you carry.
1 minute.
To adequately address and acknowledge the specific fear or pain, the young person must be honest with themselves. Honesty must be revered and reinforced with great emphasis for our young children and teens, especially self-honesty. The genuine dangers of being self-deceived must be articulated in a relatable fashion. We must help young people realize that they are not under the control of their thoughts, but rather that they control their thoughts. Today, I have behaved and displayed some rather masculine traits myself. Masculine behavior. I have spoken assertively, done risk-taking, and been practical, offering solutions and directions, but I don't think anyone's going to go home thinking of me as a man or any other variation of orientation. No, I don't think so. I think they're going to remember me as a woman who spoke the truth, a woman, because expressions of gender, behavior, does not define sex, biology does. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Hello, City Council. It's been a while since a lot of us have been here. My name is Fanshawn Blythe, and I'm against this ordinance. This move is an attempt to dismiss the people of Lincoln. The body, under its own charter, is prohibited from enacting the Fairness Ordinance from 2012. When the people signed the referendum petition to do just that, the council was required to withdraw the ordinance or put it on the ballot. It did not do either. The so-called Fairness Ordinance languished and remained on the city's website all these years. You now want to push your agenda on the people of Lincoln and redefine words and twist our law, no matter what the residents of Lincoln want. This shows no concern for the rule of law. It shows total disrespect for the scientific truth that people are born with biological sexual of a male or a female. Most importantly, this shows total disregard for the safety or privacy of our girls and women in our community. This should not be done without a vote of we the people. Please do what the people asked you to do nearly 10 years ago. And I and others don't want what happened in Loudoun County school bathroom to happen here in any public restroom in Lancaster County. Then I have, where and when will we the people see how many emails that were sent in on either side for this ordinance? And can you tell us why the director's agenda amendment, hasn't been posted in 3 weeks. Why is that, Benny? This document contains all the correspondence received from the time the director's agenda was posted last week through late this morning. Can any of you answer that for us? Didn't think so. Maybe in an email you could, Benny? Thank you. Oh, any questions?
Are there any questions? Okay. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Yeah.
Next is Rick Hall. On deck would be Stephanie Johnson.
I have a question for you folks. Were any of you alive 50 years ago? Okay. Well, I was. And who raised their hands over here? Both you? Is the world the same anymore from 50 years ago? I mean, look, you're covering your face. You know, I got this thing that I guess will protect a virus from getting you, but you could pack 4,852 viruses and it'll go through the mask. We're living in an insane time. I mean, when I went to school, you know, you'd punch out a guy that would go into a girl's bathroom because you're defending them. You know, and that's your responsibility before God Almighty, is to defend the weaker sex. It's just absurd that this issue even has to come up. We don't want to be California. Okay, this is Nebraska. And some of you might have forgot, we're not purple. This is a red state, this is a red city, and so is Omaha. By the time I'm done filing a lawsuit, I'm going to prove it in a court of law. This is just disgusting that this issue needs to even be brought up. I'm renting a piece of property to a black Indian woman. Can you imagine that? I'm white. I get a little upset when I see black being called white. You know, good being called evil. Because that's the world we are now living in. You can't use the English language to communicate anymore because it's either male or female, not these whatever, how many dozens? 72 of them? If this thing is not operating correctly, you're making the wrong decision. And you can't operate this thing without truths, because the lies will be always found out and the cheating will always be found out. And we will find out, okay? Because truth ultimately stands, because you don't have to defend it. I have something that I would like to read that I think most people in this building has listened to before, or at least read once in their lifetime. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on the principles and organizing its powers in such form. This country was founded on biblical principles, and you all know it. Distortions come from the other side. And there are a lot of evil people working to get their mission accomplished. They want our children.
1 minute.
We have, since the first president, George Bush, every president's been a pedophile from him all the way through. The only guy that isn't a pedophile was Trump. When are these truths going to surface? This country is running children. We are involved with human trafficking for these pedophiles, and they sit in positions of power. Governors, senators, congressmen. I would venture to say 40% of everybody in D.C. is a pedophile. And I think I could prove it. We need to turn this country back to its original foundation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but you can't have it without a standard, a foundation to stand on. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Stephanie Johnson. On deck would be Lori Lewis.
Hi, my name's Stephanie Johnson, and I live in Lincoln. I'm just here to speak on behalf of common sense and what you're going to find if you go outside of your bubble that you are in, because you really, really are, and you get out and talk to the people of Lincoln. I'm a mom, I have 6 kids, I'm a grandmother. I worked in the Lincoln Public Schools for 17 years. We've run a business, so just been very engaged. I love this city, as I know we all do. And because somebody who was, I am obviously in opposition to Title 11, but I want to refer to a gal. I'm only bringing this up because she brought it up, and it just made me think. She brought up a scripture. She said her dad was a pastor, and she was talking about the letters in red that Jesus said, to love one another. We do love one another. I believe Lincoln does. But if you are coming at it from a lens that you don't truly believe that, and you're coming from a lens of fear, basing decisions off of that, really need to sit back and look. We do love one another. We are called to do so. But if you're going to look at scripture there, then you also need to look at scripture in Genesis 1:27, where you had a pastor earlier come up and speak as a person for this changing the definition of sex. And I asked him out there, he didn't know what Genesis 1:27 was, so I told him, God created man and woman. Now I just want to be God. I'm only saying this because this lady brought it up in the first one. She was for it. If you believe and you want to believe in the Word of God, we love one another. And then you look at Genesis. Now you want to change the Word of God to change the definition of sex in this Title 11 proposal. That is on you. Or do you believe you have that power? Do you believe you have the power and authority of the Word of God to change the definition of sex? It's biblical. I just strongly encourage you to reflect on that, because according to this, you would change it to say, sex shall mean female, male, neither, or both, and including, but not limited to, sexual orientation and gender identity, as well as pregnancy, childbirth, and related medical conditions. I'm strongly opposed to you redefining what sex means. Strongly. It's just a slippery slope. What you're saying is there is no truth. There is a truth. There is a truth. I agree we should all have privacy. Have you ever been in a bathroom where somebody of the opposite sex comes in? It's weird. I'm sorry. It is so weird. I was in Denver using the restroom. I didn't know they had passed this. There was a man, clearly a man, that came out. I was the only one in there, came out. We were standing there washing our hands together. I was not expecting this. I thought to myself, okay, this This is Denver. They're progressive. It's weird to me. I was not comfortable, to be honest. Usually when you're up there, you're fluffing your hair, like adjusting, getting ready to go back out. No, there's a man standing there. What if I had sent my daughter in there by herself? Speaking of sex trafficking that the guy brought up before, that's a huge consideration. I just got back from Texas, speaking of which, none of this is in Texas or Oklahoma. Nobody, I got back, I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in mass country again. We can't, Corona's only here in Lincoln. It is so crazy, but that's besides the point. What was I talking about? Anyway, so there's a man right next to me, and I thought, okay, I think, what if you send your daughter into the restroom and somebody identifying as a man? We think about the trafficking. Also,
1 minute.
The testimonies regarding the workforce shortages in the previous segment, no. Have you done your research? There's been no data. All of the proponents it was all based on feelings. Victim, fear, and we are all equal under the law. I could talk about discrimination. We could all talk about it. It happens. It's a part of life. You don't even know what I've been through. If you've ever been sexually assaulted, if you've ever been harassed, let's talk. Because if you're not going to be held accountable for this, it's on you. We are 3% of the population identifies with the community LGBTQ, but yet 90%, 97% of the community has to bend. And what I think you need to really think about too is that disagreement is not discrimination. I could come here, if you pass this, I could come here every week and say, you're discriminating against me. You're discriminating against me. You're discriminating against me because you disagree with me, but you're also putting me and my daughters at risk. Also, honestly, there's a clear definition between discrimination and disagreement. Oh my goodness. I'm so disappointed that this has been on the docket for 10 years and we haven't been allowed to take a vote, and it's come to this and you just want to slide it right on through. Like, you all know what we want. Put it to a vote. For the love of the city, let us decide. You do not have the authority to say who can go into what restrooms at schools, at church. Did you hear what happened in California after the male prisoners switched to the female prisons? How many women in California are pregnant? Are we going to do that? She had a really good point. It doesn't really, are we going to be enforcing this in our jail system?
I'm sorry, but
at
it's
the homeless
time.
Shelters? I think we need answers to that too. Okay. Again, before you go and change in God's word, narrow is the gate. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next is Lori Lewis. On deck would be Patrick Peterson.
Hi, my name is Lori Lewis, and my address is on record. I'm not a public speaker, obviously, and I'm in opposition of the bill, and just ask you to reconsider letting the public vote for this. I have a beautiful, beautiful family that's biracial, and we've got gays in our family. I would lay my life down for any of them, because I love them and I don't judge them. And I'm just asking you to please put this for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
I'll give you men and women a moment to clean your rubber stamp here first. Patrick Peterson, I live downtown, and I appreciate this opportunity from the council to speak today. I do not have any children yet or any nieces and nephews, so I don't often get the opportunity to play pretend. It's great to be joined also by those who were paid to speak in favor of this today. John Wayne once said, life's tough. It's even tougher if you're stupid. Now, Despite the degeneracy of the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire, or Persian Empire, they never went full crazy claiming that males and females don't exist. Moral relativism, the idea that what is right and wrong is simply a cultural construct, is the accepted ethical framework of the current American culture. What is more startling is that it is not just the secularist or atheist who believes that objective moral right and wrong do not exist. Self-proclaimed Christians also believe in moral relativism. It's not shocking that moral relativism reigns in our present society. It has been taught by the public schools and universities for decades. When one thinks about it, this is ironic and just downright irrational. Find your own moral values, these educational institutions tell students. Do not judge others and what they believe. Then, they tell their students that bullying is wrong and hating certain groups of people is wrong. And they do not mean this subjectively. They mean everyone ought not do these things. Now, certainly I believe such actions are wrong, absolutely and objectively wrong. They, however, have no foundation whatsoever to claim such actions are wrong, precisely because they are moral relativists. How can bullying and hating certain groups be wrong for everyone if morality is relative? This is the epitome of cognitive dissonance. Moral relativists do not and often cannot comprehend the intrinsic irrationality of their viewpoint. Moral relativists may think that they are somehow being sensitive and tolerant of different cultural views, but they are in fact co-conspirators of those who wish to harm others. Let's not miss this point. Moral relativism is from the pit of hell, and anyone who supports this ideology has had his or her moral sensibilities entirely corrupted by sin. Plain and simple, this is wrong. And anyone who spoke to the economic impact and jobs impact in relation to this is living in a fantasy world. I have a personal example of a gentleman I worked with. I worked in construction for 2 years. He himself is gay. He's one of the hardest working gentlemen I know. Have a fantastic relationship with him. Never needed an excuse made for him. It's complete pandering, and it's unfortunate that these people come in from these groups and think that the rest of the community is really that dull to believe those notions. I used the term men lightly earlier, only for this purpose. Weak men create tough times. We are certainly in a period of weak men. All I can say is the tough times are sure to follow, and none of you people up there at all represent me whatsoever.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next is Mary Hilton. On deck is Dan B. Mary Hilton.
She's coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. It's been a while. My name is Mary Hilton, M-A-R-H-I-L-T-I-O-N. and I am opposing the changes to the Title 11 ordinance. So I stood before this council, this body, 10 years ago, opposing the fairness ordinance. And I was very disappointed in seeing this brought back simply because we have not had justice with that. We had 2 weeks to oppose an action of the council, of which we collected over 10,000 signatures, which was 4 times the amount required in the 15-day period following the passage. And instead of the body at that time actually dealing with it, they did nothing. We did not get a vote of the people, and there was no action taken. And so in my mind, this is going around a 10-year-old issue that has needed to be addressed. And so it's just kind of encompassing all of that fairness ordinance into something new and adding to it. We have not had our day on the ballot, and that is not just. So I was doing a little research before I came, and I saw that in the last year, there have been, a few dozen issues before the Commission on Human Rights that we have in our city. And in only 3 cases where did it seem to be reasonable. So that means the other dozen were either false or couldn't be proven. So in my mind, this is a solution looking for a problem. But I'm going to tell you that if you pass this, we will double down and we will have another referendum. But not only that, you will be creating a problem. I am a mother of 5 daughters, and I have 2 sons as well. And we have been in public a lot. We go to the YMCA, my kids participate in all kinds of sports and things. And I know, like you all, that your kids, you want to protect them. And we can all agree that the safety of children and women must come first. I challenge you to go and visit with the LPS staff and see where exactly their cases of sexual assault have happened. The little 6-year-old boy comes to mind. That happened in a bathroom. And I would bet that it's in locker rooms and bathrooms and places of undressing where those things happen. And this will cause those problems and exacerbate them. And I know that the LGBTQ activists are relentless. I have been fighting this for as long as it's been out there to fight. And I believe that this is driven by hate for God's law about sexual behavior and sexual sin. Law must be based on factual objectives. It can't be based on perception and feeling, and even
1 minute.
It has to be based on objectives that can be determined true or false, male or female. And I'd just like to make one other point. It was noted in the media on several outlets that there were no opposing oppositions to this that were submitted to the council pact. And I would encourage you to look into why that didn't happen. Because for the last 3 weeks, the director's agenda addendum has not been posted and attached. And so anything that was submitted after Friday night up until the council meeting on Monday is supposed to be attached in an addendum. And it has not been the case for 3 weeks. And so I believe those that oppose this ordinance have been falsely represented in not bringing opposition to this, and that you should request some order in your office to have those addendums attached. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for coming down.
Transparency.
Next up is Dan Berdorf. Excuse me if I pronounce your last name incorrectly. I'm sorry.
It's a very good German name, and you did a great job. My name is Dan Berdorf. I live in Lincoln. My address is on record. I'm here to speak in opposition to this item on agenda. And I wanted to start with a quote from the ordinance. Gender identity or expression shall mean an individual's actual or perceived gender-related identity, expression, behavior, or other characteristics of an individual with or without regard to their assigned sex at birth. Sex shall mean female, male, neither or both, and includes but is not limited to sexual orientation and gender identity. So thank you very much for letting me speak. I was born and raised in Lincoln, and so it's an honor to speak before the council. In a lot of ways, this council is superior to the council of a decade ago. At that time, maybe some of you weren't here or weren't aware of it. That council would often giggle amongst themselves and talk while people were testifying, so I really appreciate that you guys are professional. To quote from the recent Lincoln Journal-Star article, Jason Ball, the new chamber president, said more than 300 cities have such ordinances as the one we're discussing, and it's important for Lincoln to recruit and retain young talent, which I don't see the direct relation. According to a quick Google or internet search, there are 310 cities in the United States with a population of 100,000 or more, according to 2018 U.S. Census figures. So I think that since we know that not all of these major cities have adopted this ordinance, I believe Mr. Ball was referring to this statistic. As of 2018, there are 19,495 incorporated cities, towns, villages in the United States. So that's almost 20,000. So the chamber president must be counting cities out of the nearly 20,000 cities, towns, villages to get his number of 300 cities that have similar ordinances. If that's the case, 300 plus out of nearly 20,000 doesn't sound nearly as impressive. So there's no legitimate argument for precedent across the country, and there's no everyone is doing it argument for the so-called fairness ordinance. I'd like to share with you a personal story. Within the last few years, I worked at a major corporation with global reach, headquartered here in Lincoln. And I went to the restroom, and at that same time, for purposes of my testimony, I'll identify this person as Homo sapiens sapien, as her species, family Mammalia, and as all mammals, she was one of two sexes, so I'll identify her as female. She came into the bathroom while I was using the facilities, which was personally embarrassing to me, humiliating, and I spoke to the top manager of that corporation. She replied to me after I thought I might get punished for it, for complaining. She said that they run a professional corporation, and so they expect all of their employees to behave professionally. If someone cannot use the correct restroom, that is not professional behavior. And so she would be talked to, and it had happened before, and she was a recurring offender of doing this, humiliating men in the corporation. And so she was reprimanded, and I don't know what happened to her. And I hope she had a good life. So, quoting from another portion of that article in the Journal-Star, what happens after remains the biggest question, although Washington, referring to you, Councilperson Washington, said that she would support taking the question to a vote of the people if necessary. So in this portion, the Journal-Star implies that Councilperson Washington knows that it has to be put before the voters. This is obviously the same ordinance that the poor city council of a decade ago did not take care of. They did not clean up their mess. Now it's up to you to clean up the mess. You have to turn it over to the voters or retract it, as this article points out. Some of you are very serious people, and I respect you very much. And I hope that, Benny, I'm sorry, I got to single you out. I have the highest respect for you, sir. And I hope that you can use not only your political capital to put this to the voters, but persuade your friends and save their council seats so that, and easily put this to the voters, let them decide. You're all off the hook. And the voters will decide this, as they should have done a decade ago. So please consider that. Please consider my testimony. And I really do appreciate your time, attention, and your professional attitude. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony.
Next up is Mr. Todd Watson.
Hello, council people. Todd Watson, T-O-D-D-W-A-T-S-O-N. Hopefully you're all doing well. Don't want to add, there's been a lot of points that have already been discussed multiple times. There's a few things that have popped up that I want to bring up. And for the record, I speak for me and only me. I'm not representing anyone at this time. But after reading through a lot of those 67 pages, there's issues that I think need to be brought up so the public understands. The employer definition, of course, exempts yourselves, exempts the state, exempts official bodies. We're going to make it good for the employers in the private sector, but we're going to exempt ourselves. The rules for thee and not for me, that never goes over well, and it should be noted. Major life activities. There's about 3 or 4 sentences in the law now. Now it's like it goes on forever, and it says lifting and all kinds of new activities. Now we're making disabilities. And where does that go in law in the future? I mean, we have employment people, you got to lift 30 pounds. What happens in the future by changing lifting as a major life activity under the definition of disability? I think you're opening up a can of worms legally doing that. And the burden of proof should go on this body. Where is state and federal law insufficient? Why do we need extra local law where state and federal law is insufficient? Tell us where it doesn't work out, where it's not good enough. I think those questions need to be answered. I mean, you know, I'm in housing, one of the largest housing providers in the city. I've had instances, emotional support animals have taken on lives of their own. We have kids in these buildings. Pit bulls became emotional support animals. And not just one, you could have 2. And I can tell you war stories about what these animals can do. And then we have definitions of pit bulls or misunderstood animals. Okay, I'm not here to tell you what's understood or misunderstood as an animal. What I can tell you, when a pit bull lunges at a kid, it scares them half to death. The code says any dog. Rottweilers, you want to put them in there too? It's dangerous. And I guess in the code, you guys wrote in miniature horses. I'm going to look forward to the miniature horses going down the buildings. But you need to think through these dogs as emotional support animals. They can be dangerous. Where we get in problems, those tenants, every tenant has a right to quiet and peaceful enjoyment of their premises. That's a tough standard to uphold too. And if I got 2 dogs intimidating a kid across the hall that are pit bulls, but so-and-so needs it as an emotional support animal, I've got questions. Ferrets don't fall under the same licensing. You probably didn't know that. They didn't need certain shots. But ferrets, some people need to sleep with ferrets to feel comfortable. And what does that do when they don't have the appropriate shots? We're opening up a can of worms that's dangerous. So again, I go back to the justification has to be made on where is state and federal law not sufficient enough. And I haven't heard a good argument there. If you can provide it, I'm listening. Other concerns, abortion language is changed on page 63. To me, I don't even see it in the fairness language, but it's in there for a reason. There's a target for it. And the people need to be aware that the abortion language is being changed on page 63. So again, I echo, let the people vote. Let the people vote on these type of issues, or please come to explain a little bit about where we're going in code, because I think the consensus is we don't understand why. And we don't understand where current law isn't sufficient. That's a burden of proof that needs to be explained to many people. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Todd.
That is the end of my current list. Is there anyone else here in the chambers or in the hallway that is here to testify on item 5F? If there's anyone here to testify on item 5F, please come forward.
I think Investigator Parker went out there, so I'll just wait for him to come back and make sure that everyone who wants to be heard gets heard. Okay. All right, looks like there's no one else here to speak on item 5F. Thank you to everyone who came and provided public comment. I appreciate you all taking the time and to sit through the couple hours that it took to speak, so thank you for coming down. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on 5F, and we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda. Oh, Councilwoman Washington?
I just wanted to give a really short.
Oh, I apologize.
Closing. Hey,
Yeah,
that's all right. Hey, we've been here a long time.
Would you like to close on your?
I would. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say, really reiterate what Chairman Bowers just said. It's been a long evening, and I appreciate the time and commitment that each of you made to civil public discourse. It's not easy for anyone to stand before the dais and speak, and it's equally difficult to keep our ears open and our hearts present throughout this emotionally charged meeting. Conversations about equal opportunity have been ongoing for decades and will continue as we come to a greater understanding of what it means to extend the Constitution's promise to everyone. Goodness knows, the practice of democracy takes work and patience. Thank you for your attention this evening, and thank you for respecting the process and each other.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
We can move on to our next section of the agenda, Section 6, Ordinances, Third Reading and Related Resolutions. Item 6A is amending Lincoln Municipal Code Sections 24.38.020 and 24.38.030 to include the effective date of August 11th, 2012, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Shob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6B is amending Lincoln Municipal Code Section 24.42.020 to include the effective date of August 11th, 2012, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Washington,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6C is Annexation 21007, application of Lincoln Federal Bank Corp. to annex approximately 31.46 acres of property generally located at 84th Street and Rokeby Road, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6D is change of zone 21043, application of Lincoln Federal Bank Corp. Inc. for a change from AG Agriculture District to R5 Residential District on property generally located at 84th Street and Rokeby Road, introduced by Shob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius,
Yes.
Shob,
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6E is approving the amendment number 5 to the annexation agreement for the Rokeby Road Coalition between the City of Lincoln and Lincoln Federal Bank Corp., introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6F is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 21003, application of Planning Director to amend the Lincoln-Lancaster County 2050 Comprehensive Plan to revise the future land use map from industrial to commercial on approximately 5.6 acres on property generally located southeast of North 14th Street and Cornhusker Highway at 1555 Yolanda Avenue and 1445 and 1525 Cornhusker Highway, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Ward.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6G is change of zone 21052, application of Jack Irons to change from I-1 Industrial District to H3 Highway Commercial District on property generally located at 1555 Yolanda Avenue and 1445 and 1525 Cornhusker Highway, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6H is approving the conditional zoning agreement between the city and the Jack Irons Lifetime Trust for the property generally located at 1555 Yolanda Ave, introduced by Schob.
That'd be me. So
Second.
moved.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Schob.
Uh-huh.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6I is change of zone 21048, application of LA Real Estate LLC for a change from R4 Residential District to R6 Residential District on property generally located at North 24th and Y Streets, introduced by Schob.
So move it.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion?
I would just like to say a quick thanks to LA Real Estate for their redevelopment in this area. It's adding much-needed units to a part of town that I think will really benefit from additional folks living there. So thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Washington.
Yes.
Schob.
Yep.
Beckius.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6J, Street and Alley Vacation 21007, application of LA Real Estate LLC to vacate the east-west alley between Y and Orchid Streets from North 23rd and North 24th Streets, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Schob.
Yep.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6K, approving the purchase option agreement between the city and Mural, Nebraska LLC for the sale of city-owned property generally located at the southwest corner of 16th Street and N Street, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Any discussion? Seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Beckius.
Yes.
Schob.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 6L is approving a purchase agreement between the city and the county of Lancaster, Nebraska for the purchase of county-owned property generally located at 10050 O Street, introduced by Schob.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilman Beckius. Councilwoman Ward, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would move delay of this item until date certain March 21st with no further public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilwoman Washington. Any discussion on the motion to delay? Okay, seeing none, may we please call the roll?
Schob.
Yes.
Beckius.
Yes.
Ward.
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Our next section on the agenda is Section 7, Resolutions First Reading, or items 7A through 7H. Next section is Section 8, Ordinances First Reading and Related Resolutions, or items 8A and 8B. Section 9 is our pending list date certain, items 9A, and our pending list is items 10A.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Beckius, seconded by Councilwoman Washington. Any discussion? Seeing none, may I please call the roll?
Washington,
Yes.
Ward,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
We stand adjourned.
Everybody rest, 'cause